Part 13. Suddenly, Lord Wuqing, who was originally like a volcano that was about to erupt, strangely restrained all his anger and madness. The corners of his mouth turned up in a wicked smile, then, he muttered a little nervously. Soon. I'll personally do what you can't do. Fu Enji stared at the moody Lord Wuqing, who seemed to have a dual personality. He gritted his teeth but did not say a word. He knew that the more pain he appeared to be in, the more pleased Lord Wuqing would be with himself. The only thing that could comfort Fu Enji a little was probably that his wife had never wanted to hurt him or this world. Lord Wuqing seemed to have completely returned to normal and was no longer focused on Fu Enji. From time to time, his eyes would scan the clock on the wall. The curves of his mouth widened, and his smile became eviler. In the same way, Fu Enji was also staring at the clock on the wall, silently calculating the time. In his heart, he prayed that his backup plan would work. He hoped that his good brother from Tantra City would not disappoint him. Actually, Fu Enji's backup plan was very simple. He was caught somewhat off guard by Lord Wuqing's unpredictable behavior. However, with his many years of experience in business, he had already considered the worst possibility. He had considered the situation where he failed to successfully implicate a third-party force and completely muddy the waters. He also thought of the possibility that his peak realm, good brother, would disregard his feelings and bottom line to snatch that thing. He even thought that something would happen to Lord Wuqing and that Lord Wuqing would go back on his word after obtaining that thing. Actually, Fu Enji had already considered these. At the same time, he was also prepared for the worst. If Lord Wuqing broke his promise, he would rather leave that thing to his good brother. After all, before his wife died and left that thing behind, he did have a relationship with that good brother. Therefore, before he went to see Lord Wuqing, he wrote a secret letter and handed it to someone he could trust. Furthermore, they had also agreed on a time. If he didn't appear by that time, the secret letter had to be handed to his good brother immediately. On a wide and flat road, traffic was rushing by. A bright red sports car seemed to have turned into lightning as it sped towards the Yonghua Chamber of Commerce. Jia Shi sat in the bright red sports car. Although he was driving very quickly, he was still continuously stepping on the accelerator. He looked flustered and anxious. He seemed to be muttering, "Faster, faster." No one would have thought that Fu Enji would hand such an important matter to a nobody like Jia Shi. Fu Enji was completely betting on his luck by doing this. He didn't dare to hand over his matter to his actual descendants. After all, with the power of these two forces, it was too easy to find out who his direct descendants were. In this way, the backup plan he had set up would not be useful anymore. Therefore, he could only take the risk and look for the person who would execute the trump card among those unfamiliar faces. As for why Jia Shi was chosen, it was because he had no contact with the Yonghua Chamber of Commerce at all. It could be said that he was a transparent person. Second, because of his relationship with Elder Jia Shi had to be at least more reliable than others. Third, it was because Jia Shi had played a crucial role in the sale of the green jade rock marrow. In the end, the guest even gave him some fragments of the green jade rock marrow. If things came to a critical point and he had no choice, he could still use this relationship to pull in that powerful guest. Otherwise, with Jia Zai's wealth, even if he was a martial artist, it was impossible for him to afford such a sports car. Jia Shi had already stepped hard on the accelerator. The outline of the Yonghua Chamber of Commerce gradually appeared in his vision. Looking at the long line of people, at the yellow-robed figure sitting cross-legged at the entrance, and then at the expensive mechanical watch on his wrist, Jia Shi heaved a long sigh of relief after seeing the time. Fortunately, there was no delay. Squeak, squeak. With a screech of brakes, the bright red sports car swung around in a long arc, narrowly missing the long queue and stopping directly at the main entrance. The crowd immediately fell into chaos. No one who could participate in today's auction was easy to deal with. They were all abnormally powerful martial artists. However, there were not many with good tempers. Seeing this situation, they pointed at the sports car and cursed. "Damn it, do you have eyes? If you bump into me, you won't be able to afford it even if you go bankrupt. Bastard, if you want to die, just say it. I'll fulfill your wish and definitely not let you go back with just a limp." Not only were they talking, but some of them were even rolling up their arms and sleeves, preparing to attack. However, before they could do anything else, they froze on the spot. The curses in the crowd also stopped abruptly, and the scene instantly fell silent. Jia Shi, who opened the door and got out of the car, simply ignored everyone's scolding and anger. He actually ran straight toward the yellow-robed expert sitting cross-legged at the main entrance. How could everyone flare up when they saw this? How could they dare to flare up? One had to know that this yellow-robed person was an invincible existence at the peak realm. It was precisely because of him that the usually arrogant martial artists were obediently queuing here. Who knew what relationship this reckless sports car owner had with this peak realm expert? If there was really a close relationship between the two, then things would really be serious. However, Jia Shi had just walked up the steps, but before he could take a step forward, he felt as if an invisible barrier had appeared in front of him and he could not take another step forward. At the same time, the yellow-robed expert sitting cross-legged above suddenly opened his eyes and glanced down. As soon as he met that gaze, Jia Shi immediately shuddered. He suddenly felt uncomfortable as if all of his secrets had been seen through. This was also because the might of the Venerable Order had yet to dissipate. There were to be no conflicts in Kang City. Therefore, after being rashly approached, the yellow-robed man only warned him with his gaze and did not show any killing intent. One had to know that there was an unwritten rule in the martial arts world. If one rashly approached a martial artist sitting in meditation without their consent, the martial artist could kill them. At this moment, Jia Shi finally reacted. His heart pounded in fear, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He knew that he had almost stepped into the gates of hell and almost lost his life here. After being in a daze for a moment, Jia Shi bowed and shouted, "Greetings, Lord. I was entrusted by Mr. Fu Enji to report something extremely urgent to you." Upon hearing Fu Enji's name, the yellow-robed expert's emotions finally fluctuated. With a wave of his hand, he removed the invisible barrier on the steps and said calmly, "Come up." When Jia Shi heard this, he ran up the steps and arrived in front of the other party. He did not waste any time. He took out a secret letter that was sealed with wax and handed it forward with both hands. Then, he said respectfully, "Sir, this is the secret letter that Mr. Fu Enji entrusted me to pass to you." The yellow-robed expert took the secret letter and casually threw a pill to Jia Shi. He said calmly, "It's been hard on you. Go." The mission assigned by Fu Enji had been completed, so Jia Shi naturally did not want to stay here any longer. He happened to hear the other party ask him to go. After catching the pill that was thrown over, he hurriedly left the platform at the main entrance. Jia Shi was a person who knew how to be grateful. He knew that the reason he was where he was today was because of the green jade rock marrow bestowed by the owner of the villa. Although he didn't know what exactly was written in Fu Enji's secret letter, he knew that something big was about to happen at this auction. What Jia Shi wanted to do now was to tell this news to the owner of the villa and not implicate him in this major change. Fortunately, Fu Enji did not know what Jia Shi was thinking. Otherwise, he would definitely have died from anger. Jia Shi was now very glad that he was the one who had sent Wang Yi the invitation to the auction. After asking the attendant at the door if the owner of the invitation was here, he rushed straight to the private room on the second floor. After Jia Shi left, the yellow-robed expert opened the wax seal and took out the secret letter to read it carefully. After reading all the contents of the letter, this peak realm expert could no longer maintain his composure. He was already starting to lose control of the aura around him. In an instant, it boiled and soared into the sky, filled with violence and killing intent. His face was filled with unconcealable anger. He pointed at the sky and scolded, "Wu Qing, you're going too far. You still refuse to let it go after forcing my sister to death. Now, you actually want to harm my brother-in-law and continue plotting against this world. Even if my martial court has yet to break through the heaven and man boundary, we will definitely fight you to the death." With that, he no longer cared about maintaining the order of the auction. With a sudden leap, his figure simply disappeared. In the private room on the second floor, Wang Yi revealed a faint smile and looked with interest at the two women who were eating spiritual fruits and snacks and chatting happily as they waited for the auction to begin. Dong, dong, dong. Suddenly, there was a sharp knock on the door of the private room. Upon hearing the commotion, Wang Yi looked directly at the door. His gaze passed through the layers of obstacles. When he saw the person who kept knocking on the door, he couldn't help but mutter to himself in surprise, "Why is he here?" Meanwhile, after hearing the knock on the door, Hua Changyan naturally got up and prepared to open the door. She still had some judgment. She naturally would not wait for Wang Yi or Su Xia to take action personally for such a small thing. Seeing the door of the private room open and seeing Wang Yi sitting on the sofa, Jia Shi did not even have time to see Hua Chengyin's appearance before he rushed into the private room. Fortunately, the invitation card was sent by Jia Shi. Thus, Hua Chengyin still had some impression of him. In addition, Wang Yi had just signaled for her not to stop him. Otherwise, if Jia Shi rashly barged into the Venerable's resting place and disturbed the Venerable, he would be punished. There would be no problem even if Hua Chengyin killed him on the spot. She wouldn't have to bear any responsibility at all. Sir, please leave quickly. There will be a huge change in the upcoming auction. As soon as he rushed into the private room, Jia Shi shouted anxiously at Wang Yi. Moreover, this was not the end. After saying that, Jia Shi prepared to pull Wang Yi out of the private room, out from the Yonghua Chamber of Commerce, and away from the auction completely. When Wang Yi heard this, he frowned slightly. He did not know what the other party meant by the so-called huge change, but this would undoubtedly disturb his purpose for this trip. However, Wang Yi still remembered the favor that he owed Jia Shi for coming to deliver the message. Wang Yi tilted his body slightly to avoid Jia Zai's palm before saying with a smile, "There's no hurry. Rest here for a while. With me here, I don't think that big change will cause any waves." With that, Wang Yi's spiritual space trembled slightly. His spiritual power instantly surged out, and in the blink of an eye, it had enveloped the entire Kang City. To be honest, with Wang Yi's spiritual strength back then, he really wouldn't have been able to do this. However, he had raised the connate purple golden red gourd visualization technique to level 13 and achieved perfection, while the "baby, please turn around and visualize" technique had been raised to the peak of level 12. Thus, the spiritual power contained in Wang Yi's spiritual space had reached an immeasurable level. Even after enveloping the entire Kang City, Wang Yi was far from reaching the limit of his spiritual power. As long as he was willing to, this range could increase by several times. The more he sensed the area, the stranger Wang Yi's expression became. In his spiritual perception, the entire Kang City seemed to have been enveloped by some mysterious power, or it could be said that it was enveloped by some unknown array. Furthermore, countless powerful martial arts were gathered at the various key nodes. What made Wang Yi feel unusual was that there were too many experts. With just a cursory glance, he discovered several peak realm experts. Furthermore, there were at least 100 rank 9 grandmasters, and they were all unfamiliar faces. This wasn't right. There were not that many experts who came to Kang City to seek opportunities and comprehend the Venerable Order. Even if all the civilian martial artists in the Langya domain gathered together, they would not be able to gather so many experts. What was even stranger was that the auras of these experts were extremely similar. The blood qi in their bodies surged like raging flames, and their bodies were like furnaces roasting everything. They were actually specialized in the Tao of the physical body. Not only that, but Wang Yi also sensed that the yellow-robed expert with the power of the dragon elephant technique was charging around in the city as if he was looking for something. Clang, clang, clang. At this moment, the huge clock suddenly rang. Wang Yi turned around and realized that it was already time for the auction to begin. At the same time, layers of ripples seemed to appear in the space. A burly figure instantly appeared on the originally empty auction stage. However, this person's face was covered in stubble and he was dressed in tattered clothes. The first impression he gave was that he was sloppy. Wang Yi's gaze swept across the other party and he could not help but reveal a strange expression. Ordinary people only saw the other party's sloppy appearance, but Wang Yi saw through everything. He was a connate realm expert. To be honest, Wang Yi did not expect this. After all, this was just an ordinary auction. Even if there was something special about it, it was just that the green jade rock marrow was a little precious. How did he attract so many physical body experts and even alarm the creatures in the connate realm? Although there was no evidence to prove that those people were related to this connate expert, Wang Yi had this intuition that they were definitely on the same side. At the same time, the moment Lord Wuqing appeared on the auction stage, something strange happened in Kang City. The physical experts at those special nodes emitted wisps of red light and directly activated the scarlet crystal in front of them with a secret technique. This is from the SoundStories Audiobook YouTube channel. Red pillars of light soared into the sky and connected to each other according to a special array, turning into a huge red net that enveloped the entire Kang City. However, these scarlet pillars of light seemed to be between reality and illusion. Although they were dazzling, they were invisible to those below the connate realm, who could not sense it with their spiritual power. At this moment, If a connate realm lifeform were to look down from the sky, they would discover that although the Kang City was right in front of them, it was as illusory as the moon in a mirror. It was as if Kang City no longer existed in this world and all they saw was the shadow left behind by Kang City. Wang Yi naturally noticed the abnormality as well. His gaze pierced through the layers of obstructions and looked up at the sky. Meanwhile, Lord Wuqing had a teasing smile on his lips as he stood on the auction stage in the middle. As if sizing up his prey in a cage, he swept his gaze across the human experts below as he said indifferently, "Welcome to the auction. However, before the auction begins, I need to borrow something from everyone." Upon hearing this voice, everyone's gaze was attracted to the auction stage. When they saw Lord Wuqing's sloppy appearance, the crowd below the stage immediately burst into laughter. "Ha ha ha, look at his sloppy appearance. How did he have the courage to stand up? And you still want to borrow from us? What for? Don't tell me you haven't eaten and want to borrow money to fill your stomach." Some even stood up and pointed at Lord Wuqing on the stage. They presumptuously mocked him. Is there no one left in the Yonghua Chamber of Commerce? Or is that Fu Enji deliberately disgusting us? He actually sent a beggar to host the auction. Lord Wuqing's expression was calm as if he was not affected by the crowd's words. However, his rapidly contracting pupils betrayed him. His mood was definitely not as casual and calm as he appeared. Ignoring the ridicule and curses of the crowd, Lord Wuqing continued speaking indifferently. "I don't need money, I just need to borrow your lives. What do you think?" As soon as he finished speaking, Lord Wuqing took a step forward before anyone could react. Then, a terrifying pressure spread out from his body and suppressed everyone present. The void was suppressed to the point of exploding. Electric arcs flashed across the venue as if doomsday was about to arrive. Everyone present, from ordinary battle soldier rank martial artists to rank 9 grandmasters, and even the peak realm experts, seemed to have been immobilized by this terrifying pressure to the point that they simply could not raise their heads. Everyone revealed expressions of shock and despair. They felt as if they were in a small boat in a storm, in danger of capsizing at any moment. Their lives were completely out of their control and they could die at any moment. However, the terror of this pressure had already exceeded the limit of what the world could understand. Under such pressure, they could not even open their mouths. All he could do was stare at the sloppy, but godlike figure on the auction stage with terrified eyes. Of course, this pressure could only affect others. It did not affect Wang Yi and the others, who were in the private room on the second floor, at all. However, this scene frightened Jia Shi. After all, with his status, he would not be able to come into contact with experts of this level, let alone deal with such a terrifying change. As for Su Xia and Hua Changyan, although they looked surprised, they were not afraid. With a venerable expert like Wang Yi around, they did not have to worry about encountering any danger. Wang Yi did not care much about this. Although this sloppy and burly man was a connate realm expert, he was at most at level 1 or level 2. He could not even compare to Elder Golden Horn who had been killed by him. The only difference between the two was that Elder Golden Horn was good at the Tao of the Spirit. The end of his path should be to attain the eternal immortality of his soul. As for this sloppy connate lifeform, he was good at the Tao of the physical body. The end of his path should be to attain the immortality of his body. It was not that Wang Yi looked down on the other party. No matter what path he took or what kind of power he mastered, with his realm and strength, Wang Yi could deal with him as if he was an ordinary person. However, it wouldn't be much if Wang Yi were to face him. It would probably take only 1 or 2 moves. Of course, the other party was the one who would be dealt with. This was based on the fact that he wanted to keep the other party alive and capture him alive. Otherwise, it would only take 1 strike. Moreover, there was no need to combine 3 strikes into 1 to gather his peak strength. After all, Wang Yi had cultivated several divine techniques and his cultivation level was terrifyingly high. His combat strength was no longer comparable to before. It was much, much higher than before. It was probably not difficult to kill and suppress a physical realm expert. As for fighting a connate level 1 or level 2 expert, it was really no different from a grandfather beating his grandson. Meanwhile, Lord Wuqing did not choose to attack immediately. Instead, he looked at the audience with interest, as if he enjoyed the despair and fear displayed by everyone. As time passed, Lord Wuqing seemed to have lost interest in continuing to admire the audience. However, it should still be useful to keep everyone alive. Lord Wuqing did not carry out the so-called live sacrifice. Instead, his figure instantly soared into the sky. After smashing through layers of buildings, he directly soared into the sky. He stood above the Yonghua Chamber of Commerce and flew in the sky. The strong wind made his tattered robe flutter. Lord Wuqing stood in the air with his hands behind his back. He looked down at the entire Kang City and said coldly, "Jinling Guoshi, get out here." His voice rumbled like thunder and instantly resounded throughout Kang City. It was not that Lord Wuqing had nothing better to do to the point that he had to provoke experts of the same level to increase the difficulty. His thoughts and plan were actually very simple. He wanted to take advantage of the altar being activated and use the power of the altar to directly deal with the strongest person in Kang City. First, it was to prevent any accidents from happening, such as Venerable Jinling Guoshi causing trouble at the critical moment. Second, it was to increase the success rate. If there was another human Konate expert in this live sacrifice, not only would the success rate increase, but there was also a possibility of allowing stronger experts to descend. The human martial artists who were suppressed in the auction could not help but be overjoyed when they heard this. Their eyes lit up with hope again. It was Venerable Jinling Guoshi. Yes, it was Venerable Jinling Guoshi. They had actually neglected him. Although Kang City was not famous in the Langya domain, it was a huge city with a Konate venerable guarding it. Moreover, this venerable had just issued a ceasefire order. Now that someone had openly violated the venerable order, even if the other party was also a venerable realm expert, Venerable Jinling Guoshi would not stand by and do nothing for the sake of his pride. Furthermore, as long as Venerable Jinling Guoshi was involved, they might be able to take this opportunity to save their lives. However, those who had mocked and insulted the sloppy venerable just now would probably end up in a miserable state. Even if they did not die, they would at least be skinned alive. Speaking of which, it was ridiculous. The suppressed human martial artists had already taken one step into the gates of hell, but they still didn't know that they were going to be killed by experts from a foreign race. If they were to die here, they would probably only be muddle-headed ghosts in hell. When Wang Yi heard this, he couldn't help but stand up helplessly. It seemed like such a huge lineup was all for him. However, this line was really familiar. He remembered that someone had shouted this when the beast surrounded Kang City not long ago. No, a beast must have shouted that before. Unfortunately, although it sounded domineering, their ending did not seem to be very pleasant. Since the other party had specifically asked for him, Wang Yi naturally would not back down. He could not continue to let the other party continue being arrogant. However, before he could move, he saw Su Xia's conflicted and hesitant face. Her sad expression seemed very complex. Wang Yi was not stupid. He definitely knew that Su Xia was worried about him. She was conflicted and hesitant about whether to persuade him not to take the risk. Reaching out to rub the beautiful hair on Su Xia's head, Wang Yi said very casually, "Don't worry. Your man can hit a piece of shit like that like he's playing around. It's not difficult at all." Actually, Su Xia could not be blamed for being worried. After all, Wang Yi was already famous now, and his strength as a venerable was already obvious. Since the other party dared to look for trouble, they should have some confidence. Perhaps they had some methods to deal with a venerable realm powerhouse. However, seeing Wang Yi's confident and relaxed appearance, Su Xia was no longer so worried. She only softly told him to be careful and did not speak again. Wang Yi nodded slightly, indicating that everything was under control. Then, he took a step forward and instantly disappeared from the private room. Boom, boom, boom. Accompanied by a series of explosions, Wang Yi rode the flower phantom and soared into the sky from the buildings that had been pierced through. Lord Wuqing did not expect someone to fly out from below. He retreated slightly, clearly shocked. In the next moment, Lord Wuqing's expression changed drastically. He couldn't help but retreat a few kilometers again as he muttered in his heart. How ridiculous. Although their race mainly cultivated physical strength and was not as good at spiritual power as the ugly Yang God race, their perception was still extremely sharp and terrifying. However, Wuqing was still a supreme being who had broken through the heaven and man boundary. Moreover, he had already regarded the auction house as a cage to imprison his prey. Naturally, he had carefully observed and confirmed that other than those human martial artists who were suppressed, it was impossible for anyone else to hide. It was obvious that this person had managed to fool his senses. He had openly walked out of the auction house. Lord Wuqing had to admit that it was a slap in the face. What made Lord Wuqing most uncertain was that Venerable Jinling Guoshi, who had been provoked by his words, was right in front of him. However, other than seeing him with his eyes, he could not sense the other party's existence at all. This was a little scary. It had to be known that only when the difference in strength between the two was too great would such a situation occur. To be honest, Lord Wuqing was a little regretful now. If he had known that this would be the case, he would definitely have led the race to descend first. He would not provoke this human venerable to increase the success rate and let more experts from the race descend. At that time, when the plan succeeded, there would naturally be experts who would deal with this human venerable. Looking at Lord Wuqing's uncertain expression, Wang Yi said with a faint smile, "Your courage is commendable. Do you know what happened to the person who dared to disrespect me last time?" No matter what, Lord Wuqing was a supreme powerhouse who had broken through the heaven and man boundary. Even if he was not confident, he naturally could not admit defeat after being provoked verbally. Lord Wuqing was still domineering and arrogant. He pointed at Wang Yi and shouted angrily, "How dare you? Human venerable, do you think that you're invincible in this world just because you've broken through the heaven and man boundary? How ignorant, how absurd, putting aside the fact that you're a mere connate venerable, even if you step into the true immortal realm and become an extraordinary saint-level being, you're not qualified to be impudent in front of my race." When Wang Yi heard this, he was immediately enraged. A dangerous glint flashed across his eyes, and his aura instantly soared. He was prepared to beat this bitch to death. To be honest, Wang Yi was really a bastard. It did not matter if he scolded others, but if the other party retorted, he would beat them to death. Wang Yi had originally wanted to try and get some information from the other party, but he was so agitated by the other party that he simply forgot about it. Actually, even so, Wang Yi still obtained some information from the other party's short speech. First, he could confirm that this expert who cultivated the Tao of the physical body, including this connate expert who was dressed sloppily and had a foul mouth, should be similar to the Yang God race. They should all be visitors from another world, and they were all evil guests who bullied their hosts. Secondly, it allowed Wang Yi to have a rough understanding of this unfamiliar race. They were similar to the human race. The connate realm should be a realm that surpassed the heaven and earth boundary. As for the realm above the connate realm, it should be the so-called true immortal realm. When Lord Wuqing saw Wang Yi gritting his teeth and looking like he wanted to eat someone, he subconsciously shivered. He immediately felt that something was amiss. There was nothing else, but what made him feel the most despair and fear was that the other party had yet to make a move. Just Wang Yi's aura alone was already suffocating him, making him unable to muster the courage to fight Wang Yi. This was very similar to when he suppressed those human martial artists at the auction house. The huge gap in strength between the two was the terrifying difference between heaven and earth, immortals and mortals, and life and death. Without any hesitation, Lord Wuqing directly took out a scarlet circular crystal engraved with mysterious patterns. He injected a wisp of energy into it and instantly activated it. Boom! The scarlet circular crystal emitted billions of wisps of divine light and instantly fused with the scarlet net. The dense mysterious patterns on the crystal seemed to come alive, and they soared into the sky like ferocious dragons. Countless characters from a mysterious and foreign language were engraved and imprinted in the void. There faintly seemed to be spatial power fluctuating nearby. These mysterious foreign characters seemed to have turned into coordinates and channels that were directly connected to an unknown space or some mysterious world. They wanted to guide powerful beings to descend into this world. No, Wang Yi suddenly frowned. This was definitely not a spatial fluctuation. With the Heaven and Earth Gate secret technique, he dealt with space all day long. Thus, he was used to folding space using spatial coordinates and opening a spatial passageway to travel across a long distance. Wang Yi could keenly tell that regardless of whether it was in terms of strength or level, this was far superior to the spatial power he had come into contact with. To put it more accurately, this foreign language should be used to mark the world. Meanwhile, the power of the fluctuation used the crimson crystal as a point to tear the world barrier, causing the two worlds that were originally peaceful to form a connection and establish a world passage that could descend. In the blink of an eye, the fluctuation had already torn a gap in the world barrier. It was as if there was a passageway that wanted to completely connect the two worlds. Through that gap, Wang Yi could even vaguely see the shadow of an unfamiliar world. This was Lord Wuqing's trump card. This was also the main reason why Lord Wuqing did not escape after discovering that the difference in strength between the two was huge. Only by activating the coordinate token could the entire altar be considered completely activated. At that time, the power of the altar would envelop the entire Kang city, turning it into an alternate space. The human martial artists trapped within would not be able to replenish their strength. Furthermore, the power of the martial immortals would also suppress foreign races. They could only unleash 10% to 20% of their strength at most. When the world barrier was completely torn apart and the world passage was completely constructed, the experts of the race would descend into this world. However, there was still a prerequisite. He had to sacrifice all the humans in Kang City. It had to be known that the altar also needed power to support it. Only by sacrificing the lives of living beings could they continuously provide power to the altar. Of course, these living beings included humans, but it was not limited to humans. Even the members of Lord Wuqing's race could be used as the source of power to be sacrificed alive. This was where Lord Wuqing's confidence came from. Regardless of whether he lived or died, he was already invincible. It would be best if he could sacrifice all the humans in Kang City alive and successfully guide the descent of the race. At that time, any trouble he faced would not be a problem for him. On the other hand, it did not matter even if everyone was killed by this human venerable. With them as sacrifices, they could still provide power to the altar and guide the race to descend successfully. Of course, even ants knew how to survive. No one was willing to die if they could survive. Lord Wuqing rolled his eyes and already had a plan in his heart. He would stall. He would stall for time. According to the agreement and plan, as long as the altar was activated, the experts under him would slaughter the humans and provide the altar with a source of power. What Lord Wuqing needed to do was to stall this human venerable here and buy more time for his subordinates. At the thought of this, Lord Wuqing could not help but pretend to be relaxed. He said to Wang Yi calmly, "Wait. Human venerable, are you interested in why I'm here?" Seeing the other party's abnormal behavior, Wang Yi knew that this was not normal even if he used his toes to think. This sharp-tongued bitch was definitely up to something. Fortunately, Wang Yi's spiritual power had been covering the entire city. He happened to see the physical martial artists at the various nodes charging towards the downtown area with a purpose. When Wang Yi saw this, he immediately understood what the other party was trying to do. It turned out that this bitch was trying to take hostages. Yes, without knowing the specific function of the altar, Wang Yi could only come to this conclusion based on the current information. However, since he knew what the other party was planning, Wang Yi naturally would not be polite to him. The spiritual power that was originally only used to probe Kang City instantly increased in power and directly suppressed those fleeing martial artists. Boom! In an instant, the world changed color. A terrifying eve of power descended into the world, directly suppressing those physical martial artists until they froze on the spot. Their eyes revealed deep fear and despair. Of course, the change in color was on the spiritual level, and Wang Yi was bullying Lord Wuqing's lack of spiritual power. If the Yang God race's connate experts were here, Wang Yi would not be so casual. He had to kill them first. First, the Yang God race was good at spiritual power and perception. It was impossible for them not to notice such a large-scale spiritual suppression. Second, this kind of suppression was also easy to destroy. Although Wang Yi could use his spiritual power to suppress all the physical experts, the Yang God race's connate experts still had a chance to destroy such a level of spiritual power suppression. If a Yang God expert were to break free from the suppression and massacre the ordinary people in Kang City in despair, Wang Yi might not even be able to cry. After doing all of this, Wang Yi also revealed a faint smile. At the same time, he said teasingly, "I'm naturally interested in why you're here. But I may have to disappoint you. There's been a slight problem with those men of yours. I don't think you'll be able to get any hostages." Lord Wuqing was instantly shocked when he heard this. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Impossible." However, Lord Wuqing was not a fool. Furthermore, he had been at war with the Yang God race all year round. After calming down for a moment, he already realized what the problem was. It was spiritual power. He never expected that this human venerable in front of him was actually proficient in the Tao of spiritual power and could directly suppress all his subordinates using spiritual power. Now the problem was serious. Taking a deep breath, Lord Wuqing forced himself to calm down. At the same time, he kept thinking of a countermeasure to break through the situation. Actually, there was nothing to consider. There was only one path left for Lord Wuqing. It was to provoke the other party. Before a massacre happened, and before this human venerable discovered the effect of the altar, Lord Wuqing had to find a way to anger the human venerable and make him kill his subordinates. Even if Wuqing would take a large responsibility for allowing such a situation to happen. even if it was indeed cold-blooded to do this, and a little cruel to his subordinates. However, Lord Wuqing had no choice but to do this. There was a saying that people would not hesitate to harm others for their own benefit. He wanted to live and wanted to allow his race to successfully descend. Thus, he would only let others die to serve as the source of power for the altar. Since he had already made up his mind, Lord Wuqing naturally did not hesitate anymore. He suddenly laughed strangely and said, "It's fine if you don't mention those pieces of trash. I didn't expect them to do anything. However, trash is trash. Some of their methods are not bad. Are you interested in hearing about their methods, human venerable?" At this point, Lord Wuqing glanced at Wang Yi. Seeing his expression change, he knew that Wang Yi had taken the bait. Without waiting for Wang Yi to respond, Lord Wuqing continued, "I've always told them to be more gentle when killing people and not to make it so bloody, but those useless people just won't listen. I remember that not long ago, we attacked an ancient star. The civilization there developed towards the so-called technology, but humans were weak and powerless. When faced with such a situation, there's no need to fight desperately. Thus, those bunch of trash was overjoyed. When dealing with those weak humans, we first crushed their bones one by one and listened to their pleasant screams. Only when they took their last breaths would we refine and absorb their blood essence." Wang Yi was furious when he heard this. He clenched his fists so tightly that the void began to tremble and shatter. Lord Wuqing became even more excited when he saw this. He added, "The women in that world are really like water sprites. They were too weak and we weren't able to enjoy ourselves." At this point, Lord Wuqing subconsciously licked his lips and said with a sigh, "We almost occupied that ancient star. It's a pity that the ancient array left on that ancient star was activated and enveloped the last human country. I can no longer enjoy those beautiful women. But fortunately, the women on this big star are also as beautiful as water sprites and they even have martial arts cultivation. I think I should be able to have a good time. Moreover, I also want to see what martial arts experts look like when all of their bones are crushed. I want to hear if the cries of martial arts experts are different from ordinary people." Boom! Wang Yi was furious. He could no longer suppress the anger in his heart. A powerful pressure that was as deep as the abyss erupted. With Wang Yi as the center, a terrifying impact instantly spread out in all directions. Even Lord Wuqing, who was a connate realm being, could not help but bend down under this pressure and retreat a few steps. Some of the doubts in Wang Yi's heart were finally resolved today. According to Lu Yanyan, even the ultimate weapon could not do anything to the invaders. At that time, Wang Yi felt that something was amiss. Even with his physical strength, it was still a little difficult for him to withstand the explosion of the ultimate weapon. The Yang God race specialized in the Tao of spiritual power. They treated their bodies as clothes that could be thrown away at any time. How could their bodies resist the ultimate weapon? However, at that time, Wang Yi did not think too much about it. He only thought that the Yang God race was able to nourish their bodies in the later stages of their cultivation, allowing their bodies to possess inexplicable power. It turned out that it was not only the Yang God race that had invaded planet Earth, but also this unknown race that focused on the physical body. Meanwhile, the race that resisted the ultimate weapon should be this race that specialized in the Tao of the physical body. This explained everything. It had to be said that Lord Wuqing's plan had indeed succeeded. He had accidentally but completely ignited the anger in Wang Yi's heart. A cold glint flashed across Wang Yi's sharp eyes as boundless killing intent shook the void. His voice was cold as he gritted his teeth and said, "Bastard! You deserve to be killed." Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, Wang Yi's spiritual space shook crazily, guiding the spiritual power that enveloped the entire Kang city and suppressed those physical martial artists to erupt. His spiritual power instantly turned into scarlet flying daggers. Under the horrified gazes of those physical martial artists, the flying daggers directly slashed down in the air with the might that could split mountains. There was no sound, no earth-shattering movement, and no resistance. Under the terrifying saber light, the bodies of those physical martial artists were as fragile as tofu as they were directly obliterated in the void. However, even the blood of hundreds of foreign race experts could not extinguish the anger in Wang Yi's heart. A scarlet flying dagger appeared in Wang Yi's palm. He pointed the flying dagger at Lord Wuqing with one hand and said with a voice full of killing intent, "Beast, are you prepared to die?" However, to Wang Yi's surprise, not only did the other party not panic, he even looked very smug and crazy. At this moment, something unexpected happened. The huge red net that covered the entire Kang city seemed to have transformed into a huge mouth that wanted to devour the world and everything. Meanwhile, the energy those physical martial artists left behind after their bodies were destroyed instantly bloomed with sparkling lights and rushed into the huge mouth like moths to a flame. Crack, 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 with a series of cracking sounds, a long crack instantly appeared on the world barrier. However, this was only the beginning. The originally indestructible and immortal barrier that separated the two worlds had already begun to crack as if it would completely shatter in the next moment. Wang Yi could faintly see the foreign world and the terrifying figure standing on the scarlet altar through the shattered world barrier. How strong! This was terrifyingly strong. That terrifying figure had at least the combat strength of a peak physical realm expert. It actually made Wang Yi feel some pressure. Of course, it was only some pressure. Now that his combat strength had increased greatly again, Wang Yi, who was only missing an opportunity to break through to the Conate realm, was really not afraid of any powerful enemy. However, at this moment, Wang Yi also understood why this bitch wanted to anger him. He could not help but look a little cautious. He was in trouble. It seemed that the other party had deliberately made Wang Yi kill those people. His goal was to use the lives of those physical martial artists to tear apart the world barrier and connect the two worlds together. Ha ha ha. When Lord Wuqing saw the terrifying figure on the scarlet altar, he could not help but laugh wildly. He pointed at Wang Yi and said smugly, "Human venerable, I advise you to surrender. When the time comes, I might spare your life since you surrendered on your own accord. Otherwise, when the experts of my race descend into this world, they will definitely destroy your entire human race and torture everyone who is related to you. But don't worry, you definitely won't die. When the experts of the race capture you, they will definitely make you beg for death. The flames of sin will burn you for 1,000 years, and you will suffer every day and night to atone for the warriors of your race who died in your hands." When Wang Yi heard this, he could not help but laugh in anger. He did not know if this bastard was really stupid or not. He could not even see the situation clearly. Wang Yi did not know who gave the other party the courage to boast shamelessly when his life was still in the hands of others. It was no wonder this race specialized in physical combat. Their brains were filled with muscles. However, the other party was just a clown. Did he really think that he was that important? Wang Yi could not be bothered to waste his breath on the other party. The connate purple gold red gourd directly appeared above his head and scattered its innate aura and red divine light. Lord Wuqing did not even have time to react. Wang Yi's spiritual power moved slightly, and he directly controlled the connate purple gold red gourd to suppress Lord Wuqing. Boom! What was shocking was that Lord Wuqing, who was in the connate realm and had an extremely high cultivation level, was actually unable to resist at all and was directly suppressed on the spot. Actually, this was nothing surprising. It was just a routine operation. With Wang Yi's current terrifying combat strength, suppressing connate level 1 or level 2 experts was as easy as playing around. There was no difficulty or pressure at all. Of course, Wang Yi already knew the function of the altar. He naturally couldn't start another massacre, especially one involving connate realm creatures. After all, although the world barrier was already filled with cracks, it had not completely shattered. The world passage had not been completely formed either, so the creatures from the other world could not descend. However, it would be different if he killed this connate realm expert of the foreign race. It would probably save the foreign race a lot of trouble. After all, the experts on the other side would be able to descend into this world without any obstruction with the energy provided by the corpse. However, even so, it was just like drinking poison to quench one's thirst. The destruction of the world barrier was already irreversible. It was only a matter of time before the arrival of the powerhouses from the other world. Glancing at the suppressed Lord Wuqing, Wang Yi sneered and pointed out with his finger. Buzz! Scarlet divine light shone and instantly condensed into a physical cage in the void, imprisoning Lord Wuqing inside. If the creator of the heaven imprisoning finger saw this scene, they would definitely feel honored. After all, a connate realm expert had been suppressed and imprisoned. Even if he used a modified cultivation technique, it was still based on the heaven imprisoning finger. This explained one thing: there were indeed strong and weak attacks, but their power truly depended on the user. Since it had already happened, there was definitely no point in regretting it. Therefore, Wang Yi decided to capture a captive and hand him over to Venerable Ning Jing to see if they could obtain any useful information. Wang Yi's actions were all seen by the terrifying figure on the scarlet altar. The terrifying figure was furious. His aura instantly erupted, causing terrifying cracks to appear in the void. He pointed at Wang Yi and kept opening and closing his mouth as if he was roaring and cursing. However, no sound could reach Wang Yi, probably because they were separated by a world barrier. Wang Yi was in a bad mood, to begin with. Seeing the other party in such a state, he naturally couldn't care about him. He raised his middle finger and made a universal gesture that everyone knew. Of course, there was still a world barrier between them. Neither side could attack the other, so they could only face each other in the air and wait for the moment when the barrier completely shattered. As time passed, the cracks on the world barrier increased in number and density. It was tottering and looked like it was about to collapse. Seeing this, the two of them stopped provoking each other and looked slightly solemn. They silently raised their conditions to their peak, and their aura rose, making them appear even more profound and terrifying. It was as if they could unleash a lightning strike that could destroy the world at any time. Cracks appeared on the world barrier again. However, this was like the last straw that broke the camel's back. The world barrier, which was already on the verge of collapse, could no longer hold on. It simply shattered into endless pieces like glass. Buzz! At this moment, the circular scarlet crystal in the sky instantly erupted with boundless divine light, and an inexplicable power circulated in the void. At the same time, boundless divine light erupted from the altar on the other side. The two altars shone like scarlet suns. Boundless power descended and created a safe passage in the collapsed world barrier. The two worlds were finally connected. The initial instance of this chapter being available happened at N0 Vel BJN. The terrifying figure did not waste any time. His fists were surrounded by terrifying power. Then, with ear-piercing screeches, his fists pierced through the world passage and directly attacked Wang Yi. Wang Yi was not afraid when he saw this. As he waved his fists, he performed the most powerful attack in the world and also threw a punch. Boom! The two of them fought in the air. Then, their terrifying fist marks suddenly collided in the world passage. The power in the center erupted, and a powerful shock wave shook the world passage. Wang Yi's expression was cold and expressionless. He stood rooted to the ground and stared confidently at the world passage. Indeed, Wang Yi's fist was invincible. He easily and instantly broke through the other party's fist with an unst brother BLE force. Then, without slowing down, he blasted towards the scarlet altar. The terrifying figure's expression changed slightly when he saw this. He waved his fists again, and invincible power erupted, directly attacking the incoming fist. Exclamation mark. However, just as the two of them came into contact, the terrifying figure's expression changed drastically. His figure was like a fallen leaf as he was sent flying. How strong! He was terrifyingly strong. The fist seemed to have infinite power, possessing the supreme power to suppress all enemies in the world. Under the punch, no one could even think of resisting. They could only wait for death to arrive. Although Wang Yi had displayed his advantage and was completely suppressing his opponent, his expression had also changed. It was because of the aftermath. The aftershock of the collision of their fists actually penetrated the world passage and directly descended on this world, attacking the entire Kang city. He did not dare to hesitate at all. However, because he had temporarily lost control of the power of the world, Wang Yi could only use his spiritual power to suppress all the impact. Thus, Wang Yi had no choice but to be cautious. After all, these were two Conate realm beings attacking each other. Moreover, they had not just entered the Conate realm. Their combat strength was at least at the peak of the physical realm. A collision of this level, even if it was just a shockwave, was enough to destroy the entire Kang city and kill the millions of living beings in it. Fortunately, the terrifying figure's combat strength was only so-so. Thus, Wang Yi dealt with it with ease. Wang Yi frowned, feeling very frustrated. Things were getting tricky. In the current situation, he had to end the battle quickly and kill the other party in the shortest time possible before thinking of a way to destroy the world passage. It had to be known that the other side was an alternate world, a terrifying place with the ability to invade other worlds. Who knew how many experts there were in that world? No one knew when the other party's reinforcements would arrive, let alone how strong they were. If a group of so-called true immortal experts came, it would be very troublesome. This was not fun at all. This was regardless of how conceited Wang Yi was, and regardless of how heaven-defying his combat strength was. However, one should not forget that he had yet to take that step, and his realm was still stuck in the 9-rank system. It was not a problem for him to go against the Conate realm, but it would be difficult for him to go against an expert who had surpassed the Conate realm. He really couldn't do it. Actually, to Wang Yi, the best solution now was to cross the world passage and kill the other party on the spot. Although that terrifying figure was extremely powerful, Wang Yi was confident that as long as he went all out, he could teach the other party how to behave. However, this was also the tricky part. As long as he dared to kill his way to the other side, the aftershock of their battle would dissipate slightly. Without his protection, Kang City would be in danger. Unfortunately, whatever he was afraid of happened. The terrifying figure naturally realized Wang Yi's concerns. Seeing this scene, he naturally would not hold back. His hands were surrounded by a faint glow as he repeatedly formed mysterious seals. At the same time, the altar was activated. A scarlet pillar of light instantly soared into the sky, illuminating the world in scarlet. After doing all of this, the terrifying figure's lips curled into a cold smile as he instantly punched the world passage several times. When Wang Yi saw this, his expression turned slightly cold. He roared angrily and directly punched out to block the other party's fist. As his spiritual power vibrated, he suppressed all the aftershocks. What bad luck! Looking at the scene in front of him, Wang Yi could easily guess that the scarlet pillar of light was definitely a signal for help. No way! Wang Yi also felt a sense of urgency. He knew very well that they could not delay any longer. Fortunately, Wang Yi still had his trump cards. It was the right moment to use them now. He would find backup. That was right, he would find backup. It had to be known that Wang Yi was not fighting alone. There was still Venerable Ning Jing, who was at the peak of the physical realm, in the venerable palace of Langya County City. As long as he could get Venerable Ning Jing to protect Kang City, Wang Yi could directly barge into the other world and kill the terrifying figure. Thinking of this, Wang Yi did not hesitate and instantly contacted Venerable Ning Jing through Skynet. At the venerable palace in Langya County City, Venerable Ning Jing, who was in seclusion to comprehend the three divine techniques, suddenly opened her eyes. When she saw the message on her phone screen, her expression could not help but become serious. Come quickly. With Wang Yi's heaven-defying combat strength, she did not know what Wang Yi had encountered that made him call her over so urgently. However, Venerable Ning Jing knew that something important had happened. Without any hesitation, the spatial passageway instantly opened. In a flash, Venerable Ning Jing's figure disappeared from the spot, but in a breath, she had already appeared in Kang City. Although Wang Yi had not given her the address in the message, she knew that the place of the incident was definitely Kang City. As expected, as soon as Venerable Ning Jing appeared, she discovered something unusual and looked in the direction of the Yonghua Chamber of Commerce. It was a Conate Realm expert. There were actually Conate Realm beings fighting in Kang City. How was this possible? Although the Langya domain was vast and boundless, if there was a battle between Conate Realm experts at the same level would be able to sense it. However, the battle here had already turned the sky upside down, but as a peak-level Conate Venerable, she was actually unaware of this. This was a little strange. Despite this, Venerable Ning Jing finally knew why Wang Yi was so anxious. If a Conate Realm expert caused trouble in their territory, the city would be destroyed and they would die. Anyone would be anxious about this. Without any hesitation, Venerable Ning Jing's figure turned into a rainbow as she rushed toward the center of the battlefield. The terrifying figure was very cunning. It hid far behind and did not approach the world passage at all. It just attacked Wang Yi from afar. Boom! A sonic boom instantly resounded through the world like a thunderclap. A white figure directly tore through the void and instantly appeared above the Yonghua Chamber of Commerce. Wang Yi raised his head slightly. When he saw who it was, he could not help but look excited. He let out a long cry. Fellow Taoist Ning Jing, protect Kang City first. Wait for me to kill that thief. And with that, Wang Yi did not care about Venerable Ning Jing's reaction, nor did he have time to explain what had happened. He waved his fists and evolved into an offensive force to open a path. Then, he stepped into the world passage and directly attacked the Crimson Altar. Venerable Ning Jing's eyes were a little dull. She did not know what Wang Yi meant. However, when she saw the Scarlet Tunnel clearly, her expression instantly changed. She couldn't help but exclaim, a world rift. It was similar. It was too similar. The aura emanating from this passageway was exactly the same as the world rift that was sealed by the all-direction seal. The only difference between the two was that the Scarlet Passage in front of them was extremely stable, as if one could easily travel between the two worlds through the passageway. Venerable Ning Jing knew that this was a serious matter, but she never expected it to be so serious. If this thing was completely controlled by the Young God race, things would be completely serious. That would be the true beginning of the disaster. At the thought of this, Venerable Ning Jing's heart skipped a beat. She looked through the world passage and stared at Wang Yi's figure, waiting for him to make a move. On the scarlet altar, the terrifying figure seemed to have not expected Wang Yi to cross the boundary and come over. His body suddenly trembled, and he was clearly frightened. Without any hesitation or delay, the terrifying figure simply fled. How ridiculous. The two of them had only exchanged blows from afar and did not engage in a life-and-death battle. However, he could deeply understand just how terrifying the other party's strength was from that invincible fist. It was true that he had broken through the heaven and man boundary, and it was also true that he was called a supreme powerhouse. However, compared to the other party, the difference was too great. It could be said that the two of them were not on the same level at all. If he delayed any longer, he might have to die here. He knew his limits. Moreover, the race had already received the signal. It wouldn't be long before experts would come to help. He only needed to stall for time. At that time, someone would naturally deal with this human expert. Wang Yi had just stepped out of the world passage when he felt his body sink slightly. He felt pressure. Endless and boundless pressure simply pressed down on him like heavy mountains. Fortunately, Wang Yi was powerful. His physical body was comparable to immortal gold and divine metal, and he already had some immortal characteristics. Light circulated around his body. As his physical strength surged, it directly obliterated the terrifying pressure pressing down on him. Wang Yi frowned slightly. This world was really interesting. The gravity was ridiculously high, at least 100 times higher than his world. No wonder the martial artists here specialized in the physical body. If they did not cultivate their bodies in such a situation, they would probably have been crushed into powder by the terrifying pressure everywhere. With the special environment of this world, newborn babies would probably have the strength of a battle warrior rank expert. Otherwise, they would not have survived at all. This was a little scary. If he did not destroy the world passage and let the martial artists of this world invade his world, it would really be troublesome. Putting aside the combat power of venerables, with the strength of the human martial artists in the Langya domain, they would definitely not be able to withstand it. It would only take a moment for them to collapse. Even if they joined forces with the beast race, it would probably be difficult for them to resist. Besides, did the humans really have the advantage at the venerable realm? Not necessarily. If the other party sent out a terrifying true immortal realm existence, Wang Yi and Venerable Ning Jing would definitely not be able to stop them. They would have to seek help from the higher-ups of the human race. Who knew how many invincible experts who could support the fate of the human race existed? Could they resist this foreign race? Even if the two sides were evenly matched, it would not do. After all, the human race's enemies were not limited to this world. If they were to fight to the death with the other party, they would be taken advantage of by the young god race and the beasts while they were weak in the aftermath of the battle. To be honest, even Wang Yi felt that the current situation of the human race was not optimistic. This was no longer as simple as being attacked from both sides. They were simply enemies everywhere they looked. There were no neutral forces or allies at all. The best solution now was to destroy the world passage and temporarily stop the descent of this world. They had to focus all their energy on dealing with the young god race first. If the situation allowed for it, he would bring the conflict with the beast race to this world when it occurred. This way, not only could they resolve their internal troubles, but they could also change the situation between the humans and the beasts. At the same time, their external threat could be resolved. Furthermore, they could gather the strength of the two races to launch a counter-invasion and set up the battlefield in the other party's world. Of course, this was all in the future. If he wanted to do it, he would have to go through layers of careful planning. The most important thing now was to destroy the world passage. Wang Yi stood on the scarlet altar and quickly scanned his surroundings. Everything in sight was red. Not only was the altar red, but the entire world was red too. Even the special energy contained in the air was no exception. Wang Yi's original plan after entering this world was to first kill that terrifying figure before finding a way to destroy the world passage. This was to prevent the other party from causing any more trouble. However, he did not expect the other party to escape so quickly. Despite this, since he had escaped, Wang Yi would not waste his time chasing after him. After all, his most important goal on this trip was to destroy the world passage. Where was it? Where was it? Where was it? Wang Yi looked anxious. He activated his spiritual power and instantly enveloped his surroundings, searching inch by inch for a chance to break out of the situation. Wang Yi could not help but be anxious. After all, he could already sense a terrifying aura rising in the distance. The enemy's reinforcements were approaching at high speed. It would probably not take long for them to reach the altar. If that was all, Wang Yi would not be afraid no matter how many enemies there were. However, that aura was too terrifying. Wang Yi sensed a fatal threat from it. To put it bluntly, Wang Yi was not confident that he could defeat the owner of the aura. In fact, he might even die if he fought with the other party. Over there, Wang Yi suddenly revealed a look of joy and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in the middle of the altar. There was a mini altar in the middle of the altar. A circular scarlet crystal carved with dense patterns floated on the mini altar. Wang Yi was very familiar with this thing. It was precisely because this thing had been activated that the entire Kang city had been turned into an altar. In the end, it caused the world barrier to shatter and the two worlds to be completely connected. Although Wang Yi only knew one secret array, his judgment was that of a true array master. Almost instantly, Wang Yi came to a conclusion. As long as he destroyed the crimson circular crystal on the mini altar, the world passage would lose its source of power and would naturally be completely closed. As for whether the crystal in Kang City was destroyed or not, it did not matter. It only had the effect of positioning and guidance. Now that the two worlds were connected and the passageway had been formed, its mission was considered complete. Even if the crystal in Kang City was destroyed, it would not affect the world passageway. Since he had already found the key, Wang Yi naturally would not hesitate or hold back. Buzz! His spiritual space trembled slightly, and 3 flying daggers appeared above his head. They instantly fused into one and transformed into a 3-colored heavenly saber that lay across the world, illuminating the originally scarlet world with other colors. The blade emitted sharp blade beams, directly tearing cracks in the void. The terrifying void storm and turbulence seemed to have entered reality and devoured the entire world. Wang Yi's brows furrowed and his expression turned cold. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he reached out and grabbed the 3-colored heavenly saber. It was fine if he didn't move, but if he did, it would definitely be earth-shattering. Wang Yi had no intention of probing at all. He attacked with all his might and directly slashed out his peak blade attack. Meanwhile, seeing that no one was chasing after him, the terrifying figure was secretly pleased. However, when he saw Wang Yi come to the center of the altar and raise his saber to slash at the scarlet circular crystal, his eyes immediately widened. He could no longer maintain his composure. He naturally knew what the other party wanted to do, and he also knew what terrifying consequences there would be if he allowed the other party to do as he pleased. Without any delay or hesitation, even though he was escaping at top speed, his body actually violated the laws of physics and simply made a 360-degree turn on the spot. Then, he instantly accelerated and rushed towards the altar, completely escaping the restraints of inertia and gravity. At the same time, he waved his fists again. Endless punches blasted out from afar. Terrifying power erupted in an instant, wanting to stop Wang Yi's 3-colored heavenly saber from slashing down. When Wang Yi saw this, the killing intent in his eyes soared, and a cruel smile appeared on his face. He thought, there was a path to heaven, but you chose to barge into hell. This terrifying figure had a chance to escape but did not cherish it. Naturally, Wang Yi would not spoil him. After secretly calculating the time it would take for the reinforcements to arrive, Wang Yi couldn't help but smile even more cruelly. It was enough. There was enough time left for him to kill the other party and destroy the crimson circular crystal along the way to close this world passage. Boom! Since he had already made his decision, with Wang Yi's personality, he naturally would not hesitate. The great power around him erupted and he directly moved at the fastest speed in this world. His figure instantly turned into a stream of light, leaving behind afterimages in the void. He ignored the restrictions of space and distance and appeared above the other party's head in the next moment. At the same time, he raised the 3-colored heavenly saber in his hand. Endless power and phenomena gathered in the blade. What? The terrifying figure was clearly frightened. He looked extremely terrified as if he had never expected Wang Yi to be so fast. However, Wang Yi ignored this. He did not have the habit of appreciating the despair on his enemy's face before they died. The 3-colored heavenly saber in his hand emitted endless divine might as he prepared to slash down from the sky and completely cut down his opponent. At this moment, something unexpected happened. A furious roar suddenly sounded from afar. Beast, stop. As soon as he finished speaking, the owner of the aura accelerated several times again. With Wang Yi's eyesight, he could already vaguely see the outline of the other party's figure. Wang Yi's expression was a little solemn. He did not expect the other party's speed to increase so much. But so what? Who could stop someone he wanted to kill? Wang Yi looked into the distance and shook his head slightly. There was a faint look of disdain on his face before he roared angrily. Slash. At this moment, time seemed to have frozen. The terrifying figure simply froze on the spot, and his terrified expression froze on his face. He was completely scared out of his wits. Perhaps he still had some hidden means or some shocking secret that no one knew about. However, it was useless now. All he could do was wait for death and Wang Yi's judgment. The three-colored heavenly saber formed a dazzling saber screen. Everywhere one looked, there was a terrifying saber beam that seemed to have the power to split the heavens and earth. The blade was about to reach the terrifying figure when he regained his clarity for a moment, but he only had time to roar in despair, "Lord Wu Ying, save me." Crack. Everything was too late. There were no accidents or variables. As the three-colored heavenly saber slashed down, the terrifying figure did not have any strength to resist and was directly cut into two. Then, he died on the spot. His corpse was even minced into powder by the terrifying saber beam. Not even a complete corpse was left behind. He had completely disappeared from this world. "You're asking for death." At this moment, another roar sounded from afar. Under the influence of the sound, the entire world changed color, trembled, and was furious. At the edge of the sky, a majestic figure that was like a god directly appeared. Behind him, two towering Dharma idols also appeared one after another. The god-like figure raised a huge axe with both hands, and the endless power of the world instantly gathered on the axe blade. At the same time, the phantoms of huge axes appeared in the hands of the two Dharma idols behind him, gathering the endless power of the world. Slash. The three huge axes moved together and slashed down at Wang Yi with invincible power. After seeing the three figures and the three shocking axe beams through the world passage, Venerable Ning Jing's expression changed drastically. She could not help but say anxiously, "Fellow Taoist Wang, retreat quickly. This person is an essence realm expert. We can't fight him." Wang Yi's expression changed when he heard this. As the person involved, he knew best how powerful the axe beams were. The three axe beams seemed to contain three complete worlds. They seemed to be able to sweep through all the powerful enemies in the world, and they directly pressed down on Wang Yi, wanting to forcefully suppress his physical body, true qi, and spiritual power. This was a crisis. The crisis of death lingered in his heart. Wang Yi knew very well that he could not withstand these three axe beams at all. If he could not avoid them completely, what awaited him was death. PFF'd. As the axe beams approached him, several wounds appeared on Wang Yi's body. Bright red blood continuously dripped onto the scarlet altar. Anger. Boundless anger rose in Wang Yi's chest, burning his rationality. He was injured. He was actually injured. This was the first time someone had injured him after he came to this world, activated the system, and cultivated divine techniques. Boom. At this moment, surging scarlet energy surged into Wang Yi's body as if he was being filled with wisdom. He was strengthened, continuously strengthened. As soon as the scarlet energy surged in, it began to crazily strengthen Wang Yi's body. The formless duality technique was originally at the peak level 12 and had been unable to advance further for a long time. The realm barrier was as indestructible as immortal gold and divine iron. At this moment, there were also intense fluctuations. This was an opportunity. At this moment, at the critical moment of life and death, the opportunity for a breakthrough appeared again. This time, it was even more obvious. It felt like it was right in front of him, and as if he could completely hold it in his palm if he gently reached out. The boundless anger instantly subsided, and his rationality instantly returned to normal. Wang Yi's mind was clear as if he had entered a special state of enlightenment. At this moment, he seemed to have lost the concept of time. The crisis that he faced, as well as the life and death of the outside world, could not shake his state of mind. His mind was pure and simple, searching for the opportunity to break through and be reborn in the vast world. His body, true qi, and spiritual power constantly resonated and fused. A special power began to develop in the void. He had caught it. Wang Yi suddenly opened his eyes. A glint flashed across his eyes and he could not help but smile. So that was it. It was no wonder he could not break through for a long time. It turned out that he needed the three powers to start fusing with each other in order to seize the opportunity to break through. If not for the stimulation of the death crisis, he probably wouldn't be able to advance in the short term. Speaking of which, he still had to thank the other party. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to grasp the opportunity to break through so quickly. In that case, why not kill him as a thank you gift? At the thought of this, Wang Yi stepped on the flower phantom and soared into the sky. His gaze was indifferent as he looked straight at the 3 axe beams that were about to reach him. The breakthrough had begun. Wang Yi stood in the air like an immortal god looking down on the mortal world. His voice was like rolling thunder that resounded through the world. I will use my physical body to sustain my true qi and spiritual power. As soon as he finished speaking, Wang Yi's body suddenly became extremely blurry, as if he had fused with the world and turned into an independent world. The chaotic aura in his body spread out, and his true qi and spiritual power manifested phenomena that were circulating in a special method. At this moment, his body seemed to be able to contain all things and carry the entire world to operate and survive in his body. Crack, crack, crack. The sturdy and immortal barrier that had been troubling Wang Yi and preventing him from advancing suddenly let out a crisp sound. It did not even last for a moment before it collapsed into dust. The formless duality technique had finally broken through to level 13. His physical strength had also reached level 13. The treasure of his physical body was opened, and endless physical potential was released. The metamorphosis had begun. Wang Yi's body glowed and emitted billions of divine lights, instantly illuminating his figure in the world. Conate runes appeared on the surface of his body, and endless power instantly descended. Wang Yi's aura continued to rise. He was like a dragon that had escaped from the abyss. It soared into the sky and reached the heavens. This chapter was originally shared via N0BJN. The metamorphosis of its body was becoming more and more obvious, and it was transforming into something unknown and unpredictable. Boom! At this moment, the 3 terrifying axe beams finally slashed down. When Wang Yi saw this, the corners of his mouth curled up. The 3-colored heavenly saber in his hand drew an inexplicable trajectory as he unleashed his full combat strength to face the attack. Bang! The 2 attacks had just collided when blood flowed from the corner of Wang Yi's mouth. His body simply fell backward like a kite with a broken string. Although he was injured, Wang Yi was not depressed at all. Instead, he seemed a little excited. That was right, he was excited. After all, he had only perfected his physical strength, and the other 2 powers had yet to undergo a metamorphosis. However, even so, he was already able to face the 3 axe beams head-on, and he only paid the price of suffering some light injuries. However, after a moment of delay, the terrifying existence called Lord Wu Ying had already crossed the distance and landed on the scarlet altar. His cold eyes stared intently at Wang Yi, and a majestic killing intent appeared around him. He said coldly, "How dare you? I told you to stop, but you actually dared to kill him. Who gave you the courage to disobey my will?" Seeing that Wang Yi was injured and bleeding and that a powerful enemy was attacking, Venerable Ning Jing could no longer maintain her composure. She held the silver frost battle sword in her hand and prepared to step into the world passage to support Wang Yi and fight alongside him. When Wang Yi saw this, he hurriedly stopped her. "Fellow Taoist Ning Jing, there's no need for you to come. Just focus on protecting Kang City. Watch how I kill him." When Venerable Ning Jing heard this, she immediately stopped and looked at the scarlet altar through the world passage again. She seemed to have unparalleled confidence in Wang Yi. Even when Wang Yi said that he would kill an Essence Realm expert, she had never doubted it. However, she still raised her condition to its peak in case anything unexpected happened. As long as there was a slight accident, she would charge over with the silver frost battle sword. Meanwhile, Lord Wu Ying held the huge axe in his hand and revealed an extremely angry expression. However, when he heard this, he laughed in anger. He pointed the axe at Wang Yi and shouted coldly, "Shameless boasting. An ant dares to say that he can kill the heavens. I want to see how an ant like you can defy the heavens and attack the gods." Wang Yi stood up and dusted the scarlet ash off. He also wiped the blood from his mouth. His expression was calm, but his tone was arrogant. "Do you want to see it? I'll fulfill your wish." The moment he finished speaking, Wang Yi raised the 3-colored heavenly saber in his hand high. The innate divine patterns on his body shone, and endless power gathered on the blade. At the same time, the formless god's true body appeared. It was as indomitable as a Dharma idol. The 13 dragons and elephants, as well as the Vajra Buddha also appeared, accompanying him on both sides. The phantom of the heavenly saber condensed in the formless god's hand. Meanwhile, the power of the Dragon Elephant Wisdom technique and the power of the Vajra Buddha instantly boiled and directly enhanced the blade. Slash! With a sudden roar, Wang Yi slashed down the three-colored heavenly saber in his hand with invincible divine might. The formless god's true body followed suit, and the heavenly saber phantom also slashed at Lord Wu Ying. The power in the saber beams was shocking. It was as if the saber beams could cut through the world and destroy it. Lord Wu Ying did not seem to have expected the power of this slash to be so terrifying. He could not understand how a human who was originally like an ant in his eyes could execute such a shocking slash. However, even so, he was still not afraid. Although this attack was strong, it was definitely a fool's dream to kill a being at his level. Lord Wu Ying did not use any offensive techniques. His physical strength erupted, and his muscles were like dragons. He held the huge axe in both hands and directly slashed at the two saber beams. The tip of the blade met the edge of the axe. The powerful shock wave directly tore through the void. Crack! Wang Yi's saber beam was finally exhausted and collapsed in midair with no power to continue. Meanwhile, Lord Wu Ying retracted his huge axe and could not help but take half a step back. It could be said that the two of them were evenly matched this time. Neither of them had an advantage. When Venerable Ning Jing saw this, she was instantly stunned. Wang Yi had actually fought to a draw with his opponent. Although it was only a competition of physical strength, it was also a competition of strength with an Essence Realm expert. After Wang Yi slashed out with his saber, he did not continue paying attention to it. His figure grew even taller. He knew very well that the power of this slash alone could not do anything to the other party. What he needed to do now was to continue to use that wisp of opportunity to raise all his divine techniques to level 13 and achieve perfection. He also needed to reach perfection with his true chi and spiritual power to unlock the power treasure and release all his potential. At that time, Wang Yi would no longer be afraid of any powerful enemies. Regardless of whether they were in the essence realm or the physical realm, he would beat them until they called him daddy. Wang Yi stood in the sky with his hands behind his back. His voice rumbled like the might of the heavens as it resounded through the world again. I will use my true chi to nurture my physical body and spirit. Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, a strange change happened again. A rumbling sound came from Wang Yi's body, and his true chi flowed endlessly like an ocean. Strands of special substance seemed to be derived from his true chi, constantly nurturing his body and spirit. At this moment, his true chi seemed to have transformed into origin power, constantly scouring the world and nurturing it. Crack! The realm barrier broke again. Then, the 9 Yin Divine Technique and the Supreme Ultimate Divine Technique both broke through to level 13 and achieved perfection. The power of his true chi instantly reached perfection. His true chi treasure was opened, and all his true chi potential was released. More and more special substances were derived from his true chi as if they were all about to be transformed. Feeling the surging true chi in his body that had vaguely changed his essence, Wang Yi could not help but smile faintly. He raised the three-colored heaven saber high, and the world instantly changed color. Endless power and origin power boiled, instantly gathering on the blade. Boom! Boom! The formless god's true body appeared again. The 13 dragon elephants and Vajra Buddha were imprinted on his body. Meanwhile, the image of the Supreme Ultimate Divine Technique circulated under his feet, while 9 suns and 9 moons hung above his head. The phantom of the heavenly saber in his hand condensed, and all the phenomena turned into streams of light that fused into the blade. Wang Yi held the three-colored heavenly saber in his hand and pointed the blade at Lord Wu Ying. He said calmly, "Second strike." With that, Wang Yi slashed down with his saber, and the three-colored heavenly saber drew layers of saber screens. The formless god's true body was synchronized with Wang Yi. The heavenly saber phantom slashed down from the sky with the power of lightning. Looking at the two saber screens that were slashing at him, Lord Wu Ying's expression could not help but change. How strong! He was terrifyingly, ridiculously strong. This attack was at least several levels stronger than the previous strike. The power of the two could not be compared at all. This slash already had the ability to injure or even severely injure him. If he was careless, he could die on the spot. Although Lord Wu Ying could not understand why the power of the two attacks was so different, this did not affect his next move. The two Dharma idols appeared again and stood between heaven and earth. Then, Lord Wu Ying held the huge axe in both hands and tore through the void. He directly faced the saber beam with might that could split mountains. The two Dharma idols behind him also slashed out shocking axe beams. Boom! Boom! The two extremely powerful attacks violently collided in the void. The saber beam destroyed the sky, and the axe blade destroyed the ground. It was as if a comet had struck the earth or a supernova had exploded. The endless void collapsed from the aftershock. Meanwhile, endless darkness spread directly toward reality as if it wanted to devour the entire world. Time was flowing at an extremely fast speed, and the power of the attacks was gradually depleting. The outcome of the battle between the two was about to be decided. The shocking saber beam flickered slightly. Then, it dimmed and shattered on the spot, turning into endless energy dissipating in the world. Crack. At the same time, with a cracking sound, a crack appeared on the originally divine and powerful divine axe that seemed to be able to cut through all things. However, this was only the beginning. In the next moment, dense cracking sounds sounded again. Countless cracks appeared on the surface of the axe, and in an instant, they turned into spiderwebs. Lord Wu Ying retreated several kilometers. His face immediately turned pale, and a wisp of blood slowly flowed out of the corner of his mouth. His weapon was ruined. The weapon used by an invincible essence realm expert was actually destroyed by two saber beams. In their second exchange of blows, Wang Yi showed his advantage. Lord Wu Ying was slightly injured, and the giant axe was also destroyed. Venerable Ning Jing was stunned when she saw this. She covered her red lips in disbelief. It would be understandable if the two of them were evenly matched previously. After all, it was only a competition of physical strength. But the current situation was a little scary. This chapter was originally shared via N0VEL-BJN. After all, that was the physical realm, the second mysterious realm of the Conate realm. Lord Wu Ying was an invincible expert who had condensed a true Qi Dharma idol. Even though Venerable Ning Jing trusted Wang Yi almost blindly, she still found it difficult to accept this outcome for a moment. However, she finally knew where Wang Yi's confidence came from. He had threatened to kill an invincible expert at the Essence Realm. His confidence was from his strength. This was the absolute confidence brought about by his absolute strength. This time, Venerable Ning Jing was no longer worried about Wang Yi's safety. Instead, she looked forward to it even more. She was looking forward to how Wang Yi would create a miracle and defeat an invincible expert at the Essence Realm as a cultivator in the 9-rank system. Meanwhile, Lord Wu Ying threw away the broken battle axe in his hand and reached out to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth. His eyes stared fixedly at Wang Yi, and endless anger rose as if he wanted to burn all the worlds in existence. A terrifying and cold-killing intent enveloped the entire world, wanting to freeze everything. He was filled with shame. Endless grievance and humiliation rose in Lord Wu Ying's heart, constantly stimulating his nerves and rationality. He could not accept such a tragic ending. He could not accept that he had been defeated just like that, by a nobody he regarded as an ant. Although this wasn't a life or death battle, although he'd only suffered minor injuries, and although only his weapon had been broken, he just couldn't accept it. Boom! As Lord Wu Ying's anger attacked his heart, he burned the last bit of rationality in his heart. The two Dharma idols behind him instantly erupted with divine light, and rolling divine flames burned from his body. He started to release pressure. His divine might was like the sea, and his divine might was like a prison. His divine might suppressed the heavens and the earth. In just a moment, Lord Wu Ying and the two Dharma idols had completely turned into men of flames. The divine fire burned until space began to distort and collapse. Lord Wu Ying's aura also rose along with the flames. In an instant, it soared countless times, seemingly breaking through some kind of limit. It was as if he had become the center of the world, the one and only. He was the world, and the world was him. His thoughts were the will of the world. His words and actions were the laws, the Tao, and the rules of this world. Seeing this, Venerable Ning Jing's heart, which had just relaxed, rose to her throat again. Her face immediately turned extremely pale, and she shouted anxiously in a hoarse voice, "Fellow Taoist Wang, run! This person is burning his Dharma idols and his strength has increased greatly in a short period of time. I'm afraid he already has the strongest combat strength close to the divine realm. You are definitely not his match." At this moment, Wang Yi had also reached the most critical moment. When he heard this, he did not say anything and only nodded slightly, indicating that Venerable Ning Jing was confident and there was no need to worry. However, Venerable Ning Jing was still a little uncertain. After all, that was a divine realm expert, who possessed the strongest combat power in the Conate realm. It was a being at the peak of martial arts. He had already reached the end of the Conate domain. He was only one final step away from stepping into another mysterious and invincible supreme domain. Although this state could only be maintained for an extremely short period of time, it was enough for him to instantly kill any existence below the divine realm. Wang Yi stood in the air, expressionless. His voice rumbled through the world. I will use my spirit to control my body and true qi. His words were the laws of heaven, and his words were the rules and the dictum. It was as if the supreme immortal emperor was sitting cross-legged on the nine heavens imperial court while reading his decree to the world and descending his will. Boom! At this moment, the third change occurred. A shocking storm instantly erupted in Wang Yi's spiritual space. His spiritual power, which was as vast and surging as the sea, began to transform. Regardless of whether it was the quality or quantity of his spiritual power, they were increasingly crazily. It was as if countless lines of rules had been faintly formed. They connected to each other and formed a network of rules with a special array that directly enveloped Wang Yi's body and true qi. Crack! The last remaining realm barrier could no longer hold on and finally collapsed with a crash. The baby, please turn around and visualize technique simply broke through the shackles and broke through to level 13, achieving perfection. Wang Yi's spiritual power instantly reached perfection, and his spiritual treasure was opened. All his spiritual potential was released. At this moment, his spiritual power seemed to have transformed into some kind of majestic will, becoming the master of the world and controlling the operation of the world. Feeling the vast and invincible power in his body and the feeling of his power starting to become one, Wang Yi was a little dazed. Meanwhile, Lord Wu Ying seemed to have raised his combat strength to the peak. Behind him, a third Dharma idol vaguely appeared. However, this was the power he had obtained by burning himself. It was not that stable. Therefore, the third Dharma idol seemed extremely illusory, as if it would shatter in the next second and completely disappear from this world. Boom! The three Dharma idols erupted with boundless power and transformed into divine light that instantly fused into Lord Wu Ying's body. The endless power all returned to his body. With the enhancement of the three Dharma idols, Lord Wu Ying's aura instantly rose to the highest point. The phantom of a huge axe condensed in his hand. Lord Wu Ying's eyes were red as he stared fixedly at Wang Yi in the sky. His expression was ferocious and crazy as he instantly unleashed his full combat strength. His mighty strength erupted as the power around him completely fused into the huge axe phantom. Kill! A furious roar shook the world. Lord Wu Ying held the phantom of the huge axe tightly with both hands and gathered all the strength in his body. Then, he slashed at Wang Yi with the power to split open the sky, wanting to shatter him into pieces on the spot. Wang Yi was not afraid at all when he saw this. At this moment, his body, true qi, and spiritual power had all reached perfection. With the three treasures opened and endless potential released, he had already reached his peak and no longer had any shortcomings or weaknesses. His aura instantly erupted. This time, Wang Yi did not use the formless god's true body again. In his spiritual space, the three flying daggers that lay across the world had already disappeared and fused into the connate purple gold red gourd. Meanwhile, the baby, please turn around and visualize technique, which was hanging high in the air like an immortal and divine rune, was also imprinted on the connate purple gold red gourd. Right now, in the boundless spiritual space, there was only endless darkness and the towering connate purple gold red gourd. His spiritual space trembled slightly, and the void in space seemed to be torn apart by a terrifying force at the same time. Then, the connate purple gold red gourd emitted a powerful aura and directly descended into the real world. Wang Yi stood in the air and saw that the axe light was about to reach him. His expression was calm, without any joy or sorrow, without any shock or fear. He spoke softly and calmly. Baby, please turn around. His voice rolled and shook the world. It was like an ancient Buddha singing or a mortal's whispering. Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, the world instantly changed color. The connate purple gold red gourd began to tremble crazily, and a terrifying blade spread out from the mouth of the gourd. At the same time, the words, baby, please turn around, engraved on it also bloomed with boundless divine light as if it was summoning a mysterious power. A dangerous aura spread through the void, like a dragon about to ascend to the heavens, or an ancient ferocious beast about to be born. The axe light tore through the air, tearing through the world and slashing down with surging divine might. At this moment, the connate purple gold red gourd erupted with billions of rays of light, and the saber chi at the mouth of the gourd was dense. The three-colored heavenly sabers slashed out, and the phenomena were activated. The formless god's true body controlled the 13 dragons, elephants, and the Vajra Buddha. Meanwhile, the supreme ultimate divine technique controlled the 9 yin and yang rings and directly fused them into the three-colored flying dagger. Boom! Finally, the axe beam collided with the three-colored heavenly saber, and the world instantly lost its voice. This time, they were not evenly matched, nor were they sharply opposed to each other. Under Lord Wu Ying's terrified and desperate gaze, and under Venerable Ning Jing's incredulous gaze, the three-colored heavenly saber was easily destroyed. Meanwhile, the axe light was directly shattered, turning into an endless rain of light that dissipated between heaven and earth. Meanwhile, the power of the blade did not diminish, and its momentum did not decrease. It once again slashed down at Lord Wu Ying with surging divine might. There was no startling movement or terrifying phenomena. The terrifying divine fire on Lord Wu Ying's body that seemed to be able to burn down the myriad worlds and burn everything in the world was instantly torn apart and extinguished on the spot. The three-colored heavenly saber slashed down, and Lord Wu Ying's body could not withstand it for a moment. He was directly cut into two. Endless saber light and saber chi flashed, and his corpse was directly minced into powder, not even leaving a complete corpse. He was dead. An invincible expert in the essence realm was actually killed on the spot after burning his dharma power and raising his state to the peak, allowing him to temporarily possess the might of a divine realm expert. In the end, he wasn't able to escape the misfortune of dying. It was truly tragic and lamentable. At this moment, a vast and boundless scarlet energy simply surged into Wang Yi's body. However, because his physical body had already reached perfection, he could no longer improve it. The energy could only be stored in his flesh, blood, and bones. The powerful enemy had already died. The three-colored heavenly saber turned into a stream of light and entered the gourd. The connate purple-gold-red gourd trembled slightly and instantly tore through space, returning to Wang Yi's spiritual space. Only then did Venerable Ning Jing heave a sigh of relief. Her heart, which was in her throat, slowly calmed down. Then, a brilliant smile appeared on her face. When she looked at Wang Yi, there was something else in her eyes. Although this result was difficult to accept for a moment, the truth was right in front of her. She had no choice but to believe it. Meanwhile, Wang Yi closed his eyes and exhaled slightly. Now that his powerful enemy had been killed, he finally had the time to carefully comprehend the transformation of his body and sense the changes and improvements in his strength. However, just as his mind sank into his body, Wang Yi's eyes instantly widened and his pupils instantly lost focus. He was stunned on the spot. It was scary. Wang Yi was at a loss for words. For a moment, he could not find any words to describe the power he possessed. No wonder. It was no wonder that he could easily kill an invincible expert in the essence realm as a rank 9 expert and could even defeat a legendary existence like a divine realm expert, who was at the peak of the connate realm. Wang Yi had never expected that his combat strength would be so terrifying after breaking through. After the three powers achieved perfection, be it attack or defense, they had increased by 33 times. After the three treasures were opened and all of his potential was released, the three powers, regardless of attack or defense, were all increased by 33 times. He had achieved perfection in the formless duality technique. As a result, he could control the power of the 13 dragons and elephants, as well as the Vajra Buddha. His physical attack and defense increased by 33 times. He had also achieved perfection in the supreme ultimate divine technique. He fused the 9 yin and yang rings, allowing his true qi attack and defense to increase by 33 times. Lastly, he achieved perfection in the "baby, please turn around and visualize" technique. He could control the flying daggers and the connate purple-gold-red gourd to create the immortal slaying flying saber, giving him the power to kill immortals. Thus, his spiritual power attack and defense increased by 33 times. It could be said that on the surface, Wang Yi's three powers had already increased by 99 times. At this moment, the three powers in his body were already fused. There was an inexplicable power derived from his body, and the increase in his combat strength was even more shocking. This was the reason why Wang Yi was able to match a peak connate expert even though he was at rank 9. Perhaps the commotion of the battle just now was too great, or perhaps Lord Wu Ying's death had alarmed the strongest existence in this world, but a powerful aura instantly soared into the sky from all directions. When Wang Yi saw this, his expression could not help but change. He had just broken through and his combat strength had increased by several levels. Thus, he was still full of confidence and looked down on all powerful enemies. However, he could not forget that he was facing another world. At most, Wang Yi was only comparable to a peak connate realm expert. It would be difficult for him to go against the entire world. If he could achieve the so-called land immortal realm at this moment, he might be able to sweep away all powerful enemies and suppress countless living beings in this world. Wang Yi no longer hesitated. His combat strength rose again, and the connate purple-gold-red gourd erupted with endless divine light. Meanwhile, the three-colored heavenly saber soared into the sky and slashed out from his spiritual space. The power of the immortal slaying flying saber filled the world and instantly slashed at the circular scarlet crystal. Boom! Something unexpected happened. The three-colored heavenly saber, which could forcefully kill an essence realm cultivator and resist a divine realm cultivator, did not have any effect. The blade directly bounced off the circular scarlet crystal. What? Wang Yi was a little dumbfounded when he saw this. This was the most powerful saber move he had ever used after gathering all of his power. However, this all-out slash was actually unable to do anything to the scarlet circular crystal. How could Wang Yi not be shocked? Not only was Wang Yi shocked, but Venerable Ning Jing was also a little dumbfounded. Her red lips parted slightly, and she was speechless for a long time. She had seen just how terrifying the three-colored heavenly saber was. However, she did not expect that such a shocking slash would not be able to shatter the scarlet circular crystal. What should he do? What should he do? What should he do? Wang Yi's forehead was covered in sweat. He was also anxious at this moment. His gaze swept across the surroundings, searching for a chance to break through. He could not help but be anxious. If he wanted to escape now, with his current strength, no one could stop him. Even if he was in a different world, he was still very confident that he could survive. He might even be able to live a carefree life in the future. However, if he could not destroy the world passage, the supreme experts of this world would definitely organize a powerful martial artist invasion after they descended. This is from the SoundStories audiobook YouTube channel. At that time, Kang City would be the first to bear the brunt and become the center of the battlefield. In a moment, millions of living beings would probably be reduced to ashes in this apocalypse. Wang Yi's home, family, and wife were in Kang City. These were all things that he could not bear to part with. If Kang City was reduced to ruins in the war, Wang Yi did not think that he would be very happy to live. He would probably live in guilt and hatred all day long. Wang Yi frowned. He had a faint premonition that his offensive power had to exceed the connate realm before he could shatter the scarlet circular crystal and completely close the world passage. Although there was no evidence to prove that his premonition was correct, Wang Yi believed in his own intuition. A thought suddenly flashed across Wang Yi's mind in this desperate situation. He would make a breakthrough to the connate realm. Now that Wang Yi had reached his peak state and his combat strength had reached his current limit, there was no possibility of him improving anymore. The plan now was to pluck the connate phala from the phala space and fuse it into his body before the strongest expert of this world descended. Then, he would transcend the restrictions of life and completely break through to the connate realm. However, this method was extremely dangerous. No one knew how long this large-scale breakthrough would last and if he could successfully make a breakthrough before the other party descended. If he was still in the midst of breaking through when those supreme experts descended, that would really be lively. At that time, he would not even have the chance to escape and would directly be taught a lesson by countless experts. Wang Yi's gaze swept across the surging aura that was rapidly approaching the scarlet altar. A ruthless glint flashed across his eyes. Bloody hell, he would give it his best shot. There was a saying that wealth came from danger. One could not achieve their goal without paying any price. How could there be such a cheap thing in the world? Wang Yi was also a decisive person. Since he had already made his decision, there was naturally no reason for him to hesitate. He closed his eyes and sat cross-legged on the scarlet altar. Then, his spiritual will instantly sank into the phala space. The phala space was boundless. He didn't know how high or how deep it was. Meanwhile, the four poles had no boundaries. The scarlet connate phala hung high in the sky, scattering billions of terrifying wisps of divine light and illuminating the space scarlet. Wang Yi's body trembled slightly, and his physical strength seemed to be inexplicably guided. The 12 steps, which were completely red and tall, simply appeared in front of him and instantly extended into the sky. The 12th step of the heaven ascension stage was already on par with the connate phala. A crimson flower floated in the air, scattering inexplicable halos. The enemy could descend at any moment. There was no time for Wang Yi to observe or hesitate. He took a step forward and stepped onto the last step. Boom! At this moment, Wang Yi's body immediately erupted with a dazzling light. The power around him circulated on its own as if it was evolving towards a higher level or as if it was undergoing a transformation that was not for humans. Wang Yi suddenly realized that as long as he stepped onto the Heaven Ascension stage, his breakthrough would begin. He could only advance on this path. He could not retreat. If he reached the peak, but was unable to complete his evolution and transformation, and unable to pluck the connate phala and integrate it into his body, a great horror would descend. Gathering his thoughts, Wang Yi stopped thinking about anything else and simply walked straight to the top. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, ... The higher he went and the closer he got to the connate phala, the more dazzling the light on Wang Yi's body became. The unpredictable transformation and evolution also came to an end. By the 11th step, Wang Yi's physical strength had already increased by 1,100 times. Furthermore, this 1,100 times increase was based on his strength, which had been increased by 99 times after his physical body achieved perfection. His physical body seemed to have reached a certain limit. He was only 1 step away from stepping into the ultimate realm and completely changing the essence of life. With the connate realm right in front of him, even Wang Yi couldn't help but feel a little emotional. After all, that was a realm that countless martial artists dreamed of. It represented invincible combat strength, a long lifespan, and even more glory and respect. No one could refuse such temptation, and neither could Wang Yi. He thought, connate realm, here I come. Wang Yi suppressed the excitement in his heart and took a step forward, finally stepping onto the 12th step. Boom! Almost instantly, Wang Yi's physical strength increased by 100 times again, reaching a terrifying increase of 1,200 times. However, Wang Yi did not care about this. His attention was focused on the scarlet flower and the scarlet connate phala by his feet. With a breakthrough to the connate realm right in front of him, Wang Yi naturally would not hesitate. He leaned over and reached out, directly holding the connate phala in his palm. Exclamation mark. At this moment, the scarlet flower followed Wang Yi's actions and floated above his head. At this moment, an idea flashed across Wang Yi's mind. He instantly knew that the scarlet flower was actually a physical flower condensed from his physical strength. Suddenly, Wang Yi was enlightened. He did not choose to fuse the connate phala into his body, but placed it directly in the physical flower. The two seemed to be one, and the connate phala was perfectly embedded in the scarlet flower. The Tao flower nurtured the phala, and the phala nurtured the Tao flower. Boom! Just as the two fused, the phala space suddenly trembled. Wang Yi's body also erupted with a dazzling light. His physical strength instantly broke through the shackles and increased by another 1,200 times. At this moment, Venerable Ning Jing, who was in the outside world, was already dumbfounded. To Wang Yi, a long time had passed, but to her, it was only an instant. In Venerable Ning Jing's eyes, Wang Yi had just sat down cross-legged when his body erupted with endless power. The void and space around him distorted. Meanwhile, in the phala space, Wang Yi was also dumbfounded. The connate phala had indeed been plucked, and his combat strength had indeed improved greatly. However, the outcome was not as he had imagined. Wang Yi's realm did not directly enter the connate realm, and the phala space did not disappear. Above Wang Yi, another light flashed, shining with billions of purple lights. It was a connate phala. Another connate phala had actually appeared in the sky. Wang Yi was completely stunned. He had never expected a second connate phala to exist. Buzz! At this moment, Wang Yi's body trembled slightly again. His true chi was guided and directly transformed into a purple 12-step heaven ascension stage. The 12th step was on par with the connate phala. A purple flower floated on it, scattering light and divine energy. Wang Yi seemed to have sensed something. His situation might be different from ordinary people. He had cultivated too many cultivation techniques and was too heaven-defying. If he casually cultivated a divine technique to perfection, he could already challenge a connate expert, let alone if he cultivated 9 divine techniques. If he was not wrong, the first connate phala that was plucked corresponded to his physical strength and was supported by the physical flower. As for the purple connate phala in the sky, it corresponded to the power of his true chi and was supported by the true chi flower. If nothing unexpected happened, there should be a third connate phala that corresponded to his spiritual power and was supported by the spiritual power flower. Of course, these were just his vague senses and guesses. As for whether this was the case, he only needed to pluck the purple connate phala to know. Without hesitation, Wang Yi stepped onto the first step of the heaven ascension stage. Boom! At this moment, Wang Yi's body instantly erupted with endless purple divine light. Beams of inexplicable light surrounded him. 100 times. The power of Wang Yi's true qi simply increased by 100 times. Similarly, this was after his true qi was increased by 99 times when he achieved perfection. When Wang Yi saw this, he could not help but reveal a faint smile. As expected, even the enhancement was exactly the same as when he plucked the physical connate phala previously. Thinking of this, Wang Yi did not delay and directly walked towards the purple connate phala at the top. By the second step, the power of his true qi increased by 200 times. By the third step, the power of his true qi increased by 300 times. By the 12th step, the power of his true qi increased by 1,200 times. Standing at the top, Wang Yi bent down and plucked the connate phala. At the same time, the true qi flower instantly appeared above his head. The process was exactly the same, so Wang Yi was familiar with it. He simply placed the connate phala into the true qi flower. Boom! Wang Yi's body rumbled like thunder and instantly resounded throughout the entire phala space. The power of his true qi instantly increased by another 1,200 times. There was golden light, boundless golden light shone, illuminating the phala space golden. As expected, a third connate phala appeared high in the sky. Under the guidance of an unknown force and the fluctuation of spiritual power, the 12-step golden heaven ascension stage simply appeared. A faint smile appeared on Wang Yi's face. He could not help but look like he had expected this. Then, he took a step forward and walked towards the connate phala. It was as if he had followed the same recipe and achieved the same taste. After reaching the 12th step, his spiritual power was directly increased by 1,200 times. He plucked the connate phala and placed it in the spiritual flower. His spiritual power increased by 1,200 times again. The 3 flowers wrapped around the connate phala and flickered slightly before instantly fusing into Wang Yi's body. At the same time, the phala space began to collapse. Wang Yi simply felt the world spin in front of him as his spiritual will returned to his body. In the outside world, Venerable Ning Jing's red lips were wide open, and the shock on her face had completely frozen. How long had it been? A second, 2 seconds, it couldn't have been more than 3 seconds. However, in just a few seconds, she saw Wang Yi's aura increase 3 times in a row. This increase was a leap in strength, an increase that surpassed the level of life. In the end, Wang Yi's body began to emit wisps of connate realm aura, as if he had started to become one with the world. Had he broken through? As a connate realm expert, she had also experienced the process of plucking the connate phala and fusing it into her body. She had broken through the restrictions of life and entered the connate realm. At that time, she had experienced the great terror of darkness and the great crisis of despair. This is from the SoundStories Audiobook YouTube channel. She faced a life and death crisis for several days and used her cultivation and life as fire to refine herself. Only when strands of connate realm material appeared in her body did she pluck the connate phala and break through the restrictions of her life level to advance to the connate realm. Exclamation mark. Wang Yi suddenly opened his eyes. His gaze was like chaotic lightning that illuminated the world. Endless power circulated in Wang Yi's body. As his body trembled slightly, he could directly distort space and the void. With a thought, he could cause the world to change color. He was powerful, he was terrifying, he was invincible. Wang Yi could no longer estimate his current combat strength. If one had to make a comparison, the current Wang Yi would probably be able to kill the former him with a single breath. Yes, it would be an instant kill. It would be an instant kill. With Wang Yi's current strength, it would not be a problem for him to instantly kill an essence realm expert with his breath. Even if his enemy was at the peak of the divine realm, they would be severely injured or crippled if they were hit by Wang Yi. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of air exploding apart could be heard. Powerful beings were already descending from all directions. One could vaguely see the outline of countless terrifying figures. To be honest, Wang Yi's hands and heart itched when he saw so many foreign experts attacking. He wanted to submerge himself in this extreme situation and sweep away all the experts from this foreign world. He wanted to completely destroy this world and reduce the pressure on planet Earth. However, things were different now. Wang Yi had fused the 3 flowers and 3 fruits into his body. Thus, his realm had successfully broken through to the connate realm, and his combat strength was even more heaven-defying and terrifying. His confidence was at its peak. He was really fearless of all powerful enemies. However, Wang Yi was still rational and did not let the powerful force get to his head. He knew very well that this matter was too important. After all, it involved the survival of the human race and the fate of the race. He could not let his emotions affect his decisions. Moreover, his current combat strength was at most comparable to that of a true immortal. Above that, there was still the land immortal realm. Who knew if there were any supreme experts of this level in this world? If an expert of this level really descended and he did not destroy the world passage in time, Kang City would be the first to bear the brunt. The first to suffer would be the millions of living beings in Kang City. He still had a chance to kill the foreign race experts in the future. The most important thing now was to destroy the scarlet circular crystal, close the world passage, and completely cut off the connection between the two worlds. At the thought of this, Wang Yi no longer hesitated. In a flash, he appeared beside the world passage. Buzz! The void suddenly fluctuated violently. The three-colored heavenly saber seemed to tear through layers of space as it descended from other dimensions into the real world. Wang Yi simply held it in his palm. The saber did not move before Wang Yi did. However, just its overflowing saber chi had already torn through the void and distorted the world. The three powers instantly fused into one and flowed like water, directly supporting the blade. Slash! Wang Yi held the saber with both hands, his gaze calm. He suddenly let out a long roar and slashed out with the heavenly saber. The saber beam was dazzling and carried invincible divine might. However, Wang Yi did not even turn around. He sheathed his saber and simply rushed into the world passage. Why did Wang Yi run away? Don't be ridiculous. Was he supposed to stay and wait to be attacked? After shattering the scarlet circular crystal, the world passage would close and the experts of the other world would descend. If he still stayed here, he would simply be attacked. Crack! As soon as Wang Yi returned to Kang City and before he could stabilize himself, the saber beam had already struck the scarlet circular crystal. Perhaps it was because Wang Yi's strike had the power of a true immortal, or perhaps it was because the scarlet circular crystal had reached its limit. Wang Yi's attack was no longer as futile as before. When the saber beam slashed down, the scarlet crystal shattered and turned into strands of light that dissipated into the world. The world shook, the mountains and rivers swayed, and the sun, moon, and stars rotated. This moment was like the beginning of a disaster or the end of the world. Rumble! The scarlet altar shook, Kang City shook, the two worlds shook. Wang Yi's judgment was not wrong at all. The scarlet circular crystal was the source of the world passage's power. The moment it shattered, the world passage rapidly collapsed. When Wang Yi saw this, he revealed a look of lingering fear. It had really been too close. If he had been any slower, he might not have been able to return now. The world passage collapsed very quickly. In an instant, 99% of it had disappeared. However, in the next moment, Wang Yi's expression suddenly changed drastically. Through the remaining gap in the world passage, he saw a terrifying figure that was 100,000 feet tall descend on the scarlet altar. It was unknown what unfathomable realm that figure was in, nor did Wang Yi know what invincible combat strength it possessed. As its aura fluctuated, the world changed color, while space and the void distorted. Even time was affected and entered a special eternal state. The figure seemed to be very angry. Its fists erupted with invincible power. The rules and principles of the world circled around its fists, ignoring space and distance. Then, it instantly smashed into the world passage in a way that surpassed the understanding of the world. Fortunately, the last crack finally disappeared at this critical moment, and the world passage completely closed. Boom! Even so, the aftershock of the figure's power still affected this world. It was as if a level 18 earthquake had been set off. Kang City became akin to a small boat in a storm. It looked so powerless amid the tremors. Wang Yi and Venerable Ning Jing's expressions instantly changed when they saw this. The two of them did not communicate at all, but they had an extremely tacit understanding. Their spiritual power erupted and surged out of their spiritual space, instantly covering the entire Kang City. Fortunately, these two supreme powerhouses were present and they were fast enough. Under the envelopment of their spiritual power, they managed to protect everyone without any casualties. However, the aftershock was still too powerful. The attack method was too unbelievable, and the explosion was too sudden. In their haste, they could only prioritize protecting the living beings. As for the houses and buildings, they could only leave them for later. The outcome wasn't great. Kang City had just been rebuilt, but more than half of the buildings were in ruins again. Only then did the two of them heave a long sigh of relief. Venerable Ning Jing patted her chest and said with lingering fear, "That was really dangerous." Wang Yi nodded repeatedly and said in agreement, "It was indeed a little dangerous." Venerable Ning Jing looked at Lord Wuqing, who was imprisoned in the red cage among the ruins. Suddenly, she recalled the world passage from before and the Essence Realm expert who was killed. She couldn't help but ask in confusion, "Fellow Taoist Wang, were they members of the Yang God race?" To be honest, Venerable Ning Jing was also a little confused. It didn't seem like the Yang God race was on the other side of the world passage. With her Venerable Realm eyesight, she could tell that there was something wrong with those people's bodies. It was as if their bodies had been tempered by the heaven and earth furnace. They were so powerful and terrifying that it could even be said that they completely focused on their physical bodies. They were very different from the spiritual power-focused Yang God race. But if they weren't members of the Yang God race, it wouldn't make sense. After all, the world passage was still here just now. There was no doubt that the other side was a different world, and the only powerful enemy the humans faced was the Yang God race. Upon hearing this, Wang Yi was about to speak when his expression suddenly changed again. There was a heavenly tribulation. He could vaguely sense that a heavenly tribulation was about to descend. It wanted to sharpen and test him, a newly advanced Conate realm spirit. Only then did Wang Yi realize that he could not be considered to have completely entered the Conate realm. Only by surviving the heavenly tribulation in front of him and surviving the test and baptism of the world could he completely step into the Conate realm and transform into a Conate lifeform. Wang Yi was not sure how powerful his heavenly tribulation was, but he could imagine that it would definitely be a disaster. A single bolt of lightning was probably enough to destroy the entire Kang city and kill millions of living beings in it. This person is not a member of the Yang God race. I'll have to trouble fellow Taoist Ning Jing to pry open his mouth. My heavenly tribulation is about to arrive. I have to leave immediately. Farewell. Without any hesitation or time to explain, Wang Yi simply opened a spatial passageway and instantly disappeared from Kang City. Venerable Ning Jing nodded slightly. She picked up the red cage in the corner and also disappeared. As for the aftermath of Kang City, Fang Yuan and the others would naturally take over and deal with it. In the endless wilderness, above a swamp, light particles suddenly rotated at high speed, and a figure walked out of a spatial passageway. Wang Yi looked into the distance and could not help but feel surprised. This place was really familiar. It was actually the swamp where he had obtained the ancient tea tree and the forbidden stone. As far as the eye could see, there were swamps everywhere while low bushes grew sporadically. The place where the forbidden stone was originally hidden was in a mess. The huge pit that was hundreds of meters deep had not disappeared. To be honest, Wang Yi was really a little surprised. At that time, the heavenly tribulation was about to arrive and the situation was too urgent. Thus, he randomly opened a spatial passageway. Who would have thought that he would eventually end up here? He had originally planned to make a trip here when he had time. This saved him a lot of trouble. He could just investigate directly after transcending the tribulation. As for whether he would fail the tribulation, this was not within Wang Yi's consideration. Thunderclouds rumbled in the sky, and scarlet tribulation clouds gathered. The entire swamp was instantly dyed red. When Wang Yi saw this, the corners of his mouth could not help but twitch slightly. It seemed that this heavenly tribulation also came in 3 waves. Needless to say, this scarlet heavenly tribulation was definitely targeted at his physical body. The purple heavenly tribulation that targeted true chi and the golden heavenly tribulation that targeted spiritual powers should come later. Only by transcending 3 waves of heavenly tribulations could he be considered to have successfully transcended the tribulation and completely transformed into a Conate lifeform. Due to his previous unpleasant experience of transcending the tribulation, Wang Yi did not choose to provoke the heavenly tribulation this time. Although Wang Yi's combat strength was unparalleled and he was not afraid of the heavenly tribulation, there was no need to increase the difficulty. The clouds became thicker and thicker, and scarlet lightning dragons were chasing after one another. The sky seemed to be getting lower and lower as if it was about to connect with the wilderness. The sky seemed to be angry. Countless yellow spots lit up in the void as if the eye of the heavenly punishment had locked onto Wang Yi. Crack! The scarlet lightning tribulation pillar tore through the layers of tribulation clouds like a divine dragon striking the netherworld. In an instant, it had already struck the swamp. Wang Yi's gaze was faint. In the face of such lightning that could destroy the world, he was neither happy nor sad. He was fearless. He also wanted to test his physical strength and did not use any offensive techniques. He raised his head and puffed out his chest. The innate divine runes on his body flickered, and he summoned endless physical strength from the netherworld to directly resist the heavenly punishment Thunder Dragon with his body. Bang! The lightning struck down with a world-destroying might. Wang Yi's expression did not change. He did not take half a step back, nor did he suffer any damage. Wang Yi frowned slightly. Wasn't the power of this heavenly tribulation a little too weak? It was probably only at Conate level 1 at most. Boom! Just as the lightning dissipated, Wang Yi's body suddenly bloomed with divine light. Wisps of terrifying aura seeped out of his body, and there were even rumbling sounds. 100-fold increase. Wang Yi's physical strength had instantly increased by 100 times after surviving this tribulation lightning. What the hell? There was still room for improvement. To be honest, Wang Yi did not expect that just transcending a tribulation would bring such a terrifying increase in his combat strength. However, Wang Yi felt that this recipe and taste were a little familiar. He also had some guesses. Meanwhile, the layers of tribulation clouds moved again in the sky, and terrifying tribulation lightning was brewing. Boom, boom, boom. In the blink of an eye, bolts of lightning struck down, and the swamp turned into a sea of lightning. The second bolt of tribulation lightning was at Conate level 2. The power of his physical body increased by 200 times. The third bolt of tribulation lightning was at Conate level -3. The power of his physical body increased by 300 times. The fourth bolt of tribulation lightning was at Conate level -4. The power of his physical body increased by 400 times. Boom. The 12th bolt of tribulation lightning seemed to have come from the beginning of chaos. The power of creation lingered in the surroundings and finally struck down at Wang Yi. Facing this tribulation lightning comparable to the attack of a peak divine realm expert, Wang Yi stood steadily, like an immortal king standing in eternity. He did not dodge and directly used his resplendent body to receive the power of heavenly punishment again. If this was seen by the world or spread out, everyone would definitely be shocked. Boom. As expected, Wang Yi was not affected at all. As his body shook, his body directly transformed into a conate body, and his power instantly increased by 1,200 times. Perhaps only someone with such a terrifying foundation like Wang Yi would have such a terrifying increase in strength when he broke through. Furthermore, only someone as invincible as Wang Yi could survive such an inhumane heavenly tribulation. If an ordinary person came, no matter how talented they were, how heaven-defying their talent was, or how peerless their combat strength was, they would be reduced to ashes under the heavenly tribulation. Crack! At this moment, the physical flower suddenly appeared above Wang Yi's head and crisp sounds rang out. It was the conate phala. Wang Yi's expression changed slightly. He did not expect the conate phala to have mutated. The physical flower trembled slightly, and dense cracks appeared on the scarlet conate phala. This is from the SoundStories Audiobook YouTube channel. There seemed to be a peerless god hidden inside. Now, it was about to break free from its shackles and appear in the real world from an illusion, bathing in the flames of the myriad Taos to reconstruct its invincible body. Bang! The conate phala seemed to have reached its limit. The layer of scarlet light covering it instantly shattered. At the same time, Wang Yi's body trembled and emitted boundless divine light. The power of his conate body increased by another 1,200 times. Not only that, Wang Yi suddenly felt that his lifespan had also increased by 1,000 years. As he looked around, Wang Yi's expression suddenly became extremely strange. The corners of his mouth kept twitching, and his brain could not even think for the time being. There was only one thought left in his mind. Could this thing still be considered a conate phala? To be honest, it was no wonder Wang Yi had lost his composure. At this moment, there was no trace of the conate phala in the physical flower. In its place was an irregular-shaped piece of metal the size of a palm and as red as blood. Wang Yi didn't even know what to call this thing. A conate piece of metal. If not for the fact that his combat strength and lifespan had increased, Wang Yi would probably have even wanted to die. This piece of irregular metal was indeed a little too much. The wind and clouds in the sky changed, and the scarlet red retreated. Then, layers of purple tribulation clouds directly enveloped the sky. That was right, Wang Yi could not help but sigh slightly. It was indeed as he had guessed. It was just like putting old wine in new bottles. He used his true chi to withstand the 12 purple lightning bolts. Then, his true energy simply transformed into conate realm true chi, while its power instantly increased by 1,200 times. In the true chi flower, the surface of the conate phala shattered and turned into a black seed. The power of his connate realm true chi increased by another 1,200 times, and his lifespan increased by another 1,000 years. As expected, the purple dissipated, and the sky was once again enveloped by layers of golden tribulation clouds. He used his spiritual power to withstand the 12 golden bolts of tribulation lightning. His spiritual power directly transformed into a connate realm divine sense, and its power instantly increased by 1,200 times. Meanwhile, the surface of the connate phala in the spiritual flower shattered and turned into a piece of broken jade that was covered in cracks. The power of his connate divine sense increased by another 1,200 times. What surprised Wang Yi was that the situation this time was a little different. His lifespan had simply increased by 2,000 years. At this moment, Wang Yi's lifespan had already reached a terrifying 4,999 years. He was just a year away from breaking through the 5,000-year mark. However, Wang Yi had a vague feeling that there seemed to be some kind of taboo surrounding the number 5,000. When a martial artist broke through to the connate realm, the maximum lifespan they could reach was 4,999 years. Wang Yi stood in the air with his hands behind his back. Now that he had completely entered the connate realm and had completely transformed into a connate life form, he could fly without the 3 flower phantoms. Wang Yi closed his eyes and sat cross-legged in the sky as he carefully sensed the changes in his body. Compared to before he broke through, his physical strength, true chi, and spiritual power had all been transformed into connate power, allowing him to possess all kinds of incredible power. As for the amplification of the 3 powers, all of them stopped at an increase of 4,800 times. Wang Yi was a little confused as to what kind of taboo surrounded the number 5,000. Not only was his lifespan limited, but even his increase in his strength could not break through this limit. Of course, as Wang Yi had never come into contact with a true immortal realm creature before, he had nothing to make a reference from. He was equally unsure what level his combat strength was at and whether he had risen to that level. In a daze, Wang Yi's mind and will seemed to be in a mess. In the endless void, he seemed to be able to see the 9 heavens imperial court stretching across the world, blocking his path of advancement and also blocking the path of evolution for all connate lifeforms. Wang Yi also seemed to be able to see that after every level of the imperial palace, there was an immortal aura spreading out. There were Tao runes that belonged to eternal life circulating around as well. After the 9th level, there seemed to be true immortal creatures appearing and disappearing, as if there were heavenly courts and heavenly palaces faintly present. It was as if the 9 heavens imperial court was a test and a process to develop into and become an immortal. Every time he broke through a level, he would possess a portion of the power of an immortal. As long as he completely broke through the 9 heavens imperial court, he would immediately ascend and become a true immortal realm being. He was now a connate realm expert. Perhaps it should be called the saintly celestial. When he stepped on the immortal path with his connate body, each step was equivalent to 1 level. After taking 9 steps and reaching the 9th level, one would see a true immortal. Wang Yi realized that he was standing in front of the 9 heavens imperial court. It should be what was called connate level -1. However, Wang Yi vaguely felt that the 9 heavens imperial court could not stop him at all. As long as he was willing, he could break through all the barriers in the blink of an eye and enter the 9 heavens imperial court. He would be called a living being of the true immortal realm. Of course, Wang Yi would definitely not do that. After all, he still understood the principle of accumulation. Otherwise, it would be impossible for his combat strength to be comparable to the peak of the physical realm when he was at rank 9. It was even more impossible for someone who had just broken through to the connate realm to directly ignore the peak of the connate realm and even defeat true immortal creatures. All in all, Wang Yi was very satisfied with this breakthrough, be it the sudden increase in lifespan or the increase in combat power. The only thing that bothered Wang Yi was that the connate phala had turned into those 3 things. They turned into a broken piece of metal, a black seed, and a piece of broken jade respectively. Wang Yi had no choice but to associate these 3 items with the lofty connate phala. If he were to fight with others, he would be embarrassed to reveal these items. There was no other reason. It was really too embarrassing. Of course, a blemish does not obscure the luster of jade. Even though these 3 items were a little ugly, the increase in his combat strength and lifespan were not reduced. Otherwise, Wang Yi would have to think of a way to recast the connate phalas through the sign-in system. Retracting his thoughts, Wang Yi did not continue to dwell on the connate phalas. Only then did he look at the swamp below. Whoa, he wouldn't have known if he hadn't seen it. He was shocked. The connected and endless swamp had completely disappeared at this moment. The 3 waves of connate tribulation simply directly evaporated the endless swamp. The area hundreds of kilometers in diameter below simply turned into a huge lake that was thousands of meters deep. Right below Wang Yi, a straw hut had appeared where the forbidden stone was originally hidden. It was emitting special energy fluctuations that directly affected one's mind. What the hell? Wang Yi was a little surprised when he saw this. After all, he did not sense this straw hut earlier in his spiritual perception. This was somewhat unusual. It had to be known that with Wang Yi's current connate divine sense, even a peak connate expert or even a true immortal creature would not be able to hide their tracks from him. However, this ordinary straw hut actually blocked his spiritual perception. This was a little abnormal. Wang Yi's gaze was faint as if he had sensed something. He guessed that this straw hut should have been suppressed by the forbidden stone. It had to be said that Wang Yi was a bold person. He did not know what was so strange about this straw hut. However, he did not hesitate. His body, which was high in the sky, flickered as he rapidly flew down from above. The straw hut seemed to have sensed that someone was attacking it. Then, the special power that seeped out of the straw hut instantly boiled and directly turned into a barrier that could support the sky. Bang! Wang Yi slammed into the barrier at lightning speed. At this moment, an accident happened. With a rumbling sound, the barrier seemed to tremble slightly, but Wang Yi was sent flying. How horrible! How horrifying! How thrilling! Wang Yi stabilized himself in the void. His eyes were dull as if he could not accept the reality in front of him. Now that he had just broken through, he was in high spirits. His combat strength was unparalleled, and his lower limit was at least at the peak of the connate realm. He could even go against true immortal creatures at most. However, just as he was about to laugh at the heavens and become invincible, he suffered such a heavy blow. This straw hut, he was actually stopped by a mere straw hut and was sent flying without any resistance. Wang Yi was unwilling to give up. His combat strength suddenly erupted, and he flew down again. Boom! This time, Wang Yi was not sent flying. He did not move and stood in the air. Other than trembling violently several times, the barrier that protected the straw hut still stood there without any damage. Wang Yi's expression instantly turned extremely ugly. Although he was not at a disadvantage this time, he did not break through the barrier even when his combat strength erupted. This was equivalent to him losing. This was the first time Wang Yi had suffered such a blow since he came to this world. Even Lord Wu Ying had only injured him slightly before. In the end, as he broke through, Lord Wu Qing was killed on the spot. Wang Yi's aura began to soar, causing the space and void to crack inch by inch. His gaze also became dangerous. However, when he saw the layout of the straw hut from the corner of his eye, his body could not help but tremble slightly. His aura instantly fell, and his expression became abnormally interesting. Even the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. In front of the straw hut was a long wooden table. On it were wine flasks, wine glasses, and a piece of zon paper filled with ancient characters. Wang Yi's anger instantly dissipated when he saw the piece of zon paper placed on the long table. An untitled poem was written in semi-cursive script on the zon paper. The Zhao Knight wears a tasseled helmet, while the Wu Knight's saber shines with a frosty glow. They ride on white horses with silver saddles, swishing like a shooting star. A man is killed every 10 steps, and no one is left behind. The 2 warriors are still remembered after centuries, and their story is famous in Daliang. City 1. Though they are dead, they are still known for their chivalry, as expected of the world's heroes. Who can bear to study the Taizan? Scripture 1. Until their hair turns white. Wang Yi was too familiar with this poem. Not only was he familiar with this, but almost everyone in China on planet Earth knew it too. Even if they could not recite the entire poem, they could at least recite a line or two. In particular, most people knew that famous line from famous times. A man is killed every 10 steps, and no one is left behind. When a person retires from their responsibilities, their fame and fortune become irrelevant. As for the creator of this poem, he was the legendary man who was known as the Green Lotus Sword Immortal, the Exiled Immortal, and the Immortal Poet. He had handed down countless incomparable poems. His entire life was related to immortals. If Wang Yi was still on planet Earth, he would naturally not find this strange. However, this was the martial arts world where spirit chi had been revived. Furthermore, one could see true immortal realm beings after breaking through the 9 heavens imperial court. Now that he suddenly saw the ancient poems passed down by this man who had been related to immortals all his life, Wang Yi could not help but think more about it. However, he could not figure out who left this ancient poem and why it was not titled. Wang Yi frowned as his thoughts raced. At the same time, his mind was racing. At the same time, he subconsciously muttered, "Ode to Gallantry. Ode to Gallantry. Ode to Gallantry." At this moment, there was a sudden change. An invisible pen seemed to appear in the void and began to write ancient words on the zon paper. Ode to Gallantry. The moment the last word and the last stroke landed, a door suddenly appeared in the barrier. The next moment, the wooden door opened slowly without any wind, as if welcoming a guest from afar. Seeing this, Wang Yi had a guess in his heart. Without hesitation, he took a step forward and walked towards the straw hut. Crack! As soon as Wang Yi walked into the courtyard, the wooden door closed. Any guests other than Wang Yi were probably not welcomed. "Please sit down." There was no one in the courtyard, but a voice suddenly sounded. When Wang Yi heard this, he did not probe around. He took a few steps forward and sat cross-legged beside the long table cooperatively. Buzz! The void fluctuated slightly, and a flash of light illuminated the entire courtyard. In the blink of an eye, a middle-aged scholar appeared out of thin air at the opposite end of the long table. He had a handsome face and a faint beard. His long hair was casually tied back with a jade hairpin. He was dressed in a green Confucian robe with an ancient sword hanging from his waist and a green wine pot in his hand. Wang Yi's eyes flashed. Looking at the person in front of him, he was even more certain of his guess. He was the poet Li Bai. The middle-aged scholar in front of him satisfied all of Wang Yi's imagination. He was cool, unruly, confident, arrogant. The man stood with his hands behind his back. He neither spoke nor moved an inch. However, Wang Yi had a premonition that he was the immortal poet Li Bai, the green lotus sword immortal who had been banished from the heavens to live on earth. Wang Yi could not help but swallow his saliva. He subconsciously wanted to say something to confirm the other party's identity. "I'm Li Bai, the sword immortal Li Teibai. I transformed into a green lotus and roamed the heavens and the myriad worlds. Finally, I gained enlightenment here and completely stepped into the land immortal realm." The land immortal realm. When Wang Yi heard this, he could no longer remain calm. He immediately asked, "Senior, in what realm can one become a land immortal?" Wang Yi could not be blamed for losing his composure. After all, what he was most anxious about now was to step into the land immortal realm. Then, through the mark left behind by the myriad world seal on Lu Yanyan's body, he would simply open a passage to planet Earth to support China, who was bitterly resisting the powerful enemies from two worlds. However, the immortal poet paid no attention to his question and continued. "I don't know who you are, but since you can mention Ode to Gallantry, there are only two possibilities. Perhaps you are the destined child of this world and possess a heaven-defying opportunity. Or perhaps you're from my hometown, planet Earth, so it's normal for you to know this." Only then did Wang Yi realize why the other party was ignoring him. It turned out that the immortal poet in front of him was not a real person. To be more specific, this immortal poet was nothing more than an image left behind by the previous owner. Or rather, it was just a computer program. He had no wisdom of his own. He would only faithfully carry out the will left behind by his master. Since that was the case, Wang Yi naturally did not say anything else and listened to the other party calmly. The origin of this chapter's debut can be traced to En to O to Vel to Be to In. The immortal poet continued, "Since I've entered the land immortal realm in this world, I naturally have to leave some opportunities for this world. This poem is called the Ode to Gallantry. It contains the cultivation technique, Taizan scripture. This pot of wine is called the Taizan jade liquid. It can help one cultivate the Taizan scripture. Those who are not pure-minded cannot comprehend this method. This is also your final test. Alright, I've left behind an opportunity. This is not my homeland after all. I'll return on my own. If we're fated, we'll meet again in the future." The moment the immortal poet finished speaking, the void rippled again, but Wang Yi did not notice it at all. Then, the phantom of the immortal poet instantly dissipated from the straw hut. Wang Yi was shocked. This method of disappearing was too strange and unbelievable. Even if the phantom dissipated into energy, some traces would still be left behind. If the void and space were torn apart, there would also be residual power. However, other than fluctuations and ripples in the void, there were no remnants of power or traces of energy dissipating. Whatever, Wang Yi could not be bothered to continue dwelling on this question. After all, This immortal poet was left behind by a great divine being at the land immortal realm. It was normal for him to have all sorts of unbelievable powers. Reaching out to pick up the zon paper on the long table, Wang Yi could not help but smile. Then, he shook his head gently. Pure-minded, although his martial arts aptitude was heaven-defying and his cultivation level was comparable to that of a true immortal, he also had his own selfish desires. He really could not control such things in his heart. Most people wouldn't be able to do that, let alone Wang Yi. One had to know that in the original novel that contained the poem, many heroes were unable to comprehend the ultimate profound meaning of the Taizan scripture. In the end, Shi Potion, who could not read a single word, comprehended the strongest cultivation technique, the Taizan scripture. Fortunately, Wang Yi was here. If it were anyone else, unless they had Shi Potion's fate, they were destined to miss this opportunity. The smile on Wang Yi's face did not change. He simply called out to the system in his mind. I want to use the directional sign-in. Ding. Would you like to use a sign-in opportunity to exchange for a directional sign-in? The system's mechanical prompt sounded in his mind. Wang Yi confirmed without any hesitation. Yes. Ding. The exchange was successful. Please specify the item you want to exchange. Wang Yi thought for a moment and said again, I want a method to understand the Taizan scripture. Ding. The host's request has been recorded. Signing in. Locked onto the Dao enhancement method, Epiphany. Based on the level of the Dao enhancement method, the current success rate is 100%. Does the host want to sign in and obtain the Dao enhancement method, Epiphany? There was nothing to hesitate about. Wang Yi confirmed in his mind. Yes. Ding. Congratulations to the host for successfully signing in. You have obtained the Dao enhancement method, Epiphany. The moment the system notification sounded, Wang Yi felt his will tremble. A wisp of green fog filled with special Dao runes appeared in Wang Yi's spiritual space. The information and effects of the method instantly appeared in Wang Yi's mind. This special Dao rune was the so-called Dao enhancement method, Epiphany. He only needed to touch it with his spiritual power to activate it and enter a state of epiphany. Wang Yi naturally did not hesitate. As his spiritual power fluctuated, his special Dao runes were activated. Buzz. In the blink of an eye, the green mist had already filled his entire spiritual space and enveloped his mind and soul. Wang Yi closed his eyes. However, the green mist seemed to have given him a different pair of eyes, directly opening the door to a new world for him. The ancient words on the zon paper seemed to come alive under the gaze of those eyes. They kept flickering in the void. Then, the ancient words evolved. It was as if the rules were being reshaped, or as if the truth was being created. It attracted an unknown power that poured directly into his mind. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At this moment, a monstrous change instantly occurred in Wang Yi's mind. A majestic figure seemed to have crossed endless latitudes and torn apart layers of worlds. It condensed into a figure from nothing in his mind. He wondered if the majestic figure was under any restrictions, or if it was without the support of some kind of power. The speed at which this figure condensed became extremely slow. It still existed in his mind in the form of a phantom. Wang Yi even vaguely felt that the figure was powerless and was about to dissipate. Wang Yi's eyes were still tightly shut and his brows were furrowed. He looked extremely impatient, as if he was about to fall out of the state of epiphany at any moment. That was right. Wang Yi seemed to think of something and his eyebrows instantly relaxed. Then, he picked up the wine pot on the long table and suddenly drank a few mouthfuls. It was the Taizan jade liquid. The immortal poet had previously made it clear that this, Taizan jade liquid, was the best item to assist in cultivating the Taizan scripture. Wang Yi was also helpless. The effect of comprehending cultivation techniques in this state of epiphany was not bad, but there were some side effects that seemed to lower one's intelligence. If this were any other time, he would have drunk the Taizan jade liquid immediately when faced with this kind of situation. But what about now? He had actually reached the point where the majestic figure in the depths of his mind could not condense and even showed signs of dissipating. Only then did he remember that there was still the thing called the Taizan jade liquid. It was thick, fragrant, and sweet. The strong wine fragrance instantly filled Wang Yi's mouth, constantly stimulating his taste buds. Buzz. As soon as the liquid entered his throat, the majestic figure seemed to have instantly gained the support of some power and started to transform from illusion to reality. At this moment, an inexplicable power began to rise around Wang Yi's body. It actually faintly resonated with the barrier, as if the power between the two belonged to the same source. When Wang Yi saw this, he naturally did not hold back. He raised the wine pot again and took a big gulp of the Taizan jade liquid. A storm appeared in the depths of his mind as if oil had been poured into a raging fire. The majestic figure turned from illusion to reality even more quickly. What happened next was much simpler. All Wang Yi needed to do was to keep drinking the Taizan jade liquid. Gulp, gulp, gulp. The liquid dripped from the corner of Wang Yi's mouth, splashing his collar and chest. Wang Yi couldn't remember how much he had drunk. He simply felt lightheaded and dizzy. He felt hungover. Buzz. The quantitative change seemed to have finally caused a qualitative change. The majestic figure in the depths of his mind had completely turned from an illusion into a real existence. It was as if an immortal king stood in eternity and looked down on the rise and fall of the world. At the same time, the green mist seemed to have finally exhausted all its Dao runes. Wang Yi left his state of epiphany and suddenly opened his eyes. Two divine halos instantly lit up the world. It was a Dharma idol. At this moment and at this place, a Dharma idol condensed in the depths of his mind. Wang Yi's gaze was faint. The Taizan scripture seemed to have transformed into a torrent of information that flashed across his mind. I see. After reading all the information, Wang Yi was shocked. He couldn't help but mutter, I didn't expect this. I didn't expect there to be a fourth power in this world. It was psychic power. To be honest, Wang Yi had never expected that the Taizan scripture was a divine technique that cultivated psychic power. He had never condensed a physical Dharma idol, a true Qi Dharma idol, or a divine sense Dharma idol. However, in the end, he condensed a psychic Dharma idol at conate level -1. Wang Yi stretched out his palm, and a wave of special green energy filled his palm. Feeling the various changes in his body, the shock on Wang Yi's face could not help but intensify. This psychic Dharma idol was quite interesting. If one were to ask if it was weak, it was really weak. It basically did not have any offensive power. However, if one were to ask if it was strong, it was really strong. The physical Dharma idol was very pure and it only had one ability. It was the ability of enhancement. As the name implied, the ability of the psychic Dharma idol was to enhance the combat power of a martial artist. The Taizan scripture was divided into 9 levels. At level 1, a martial artist's combat ability could increase by 100%. At level 2, their combat strength would double, while their combat strength would increase by 4 times at level -3. Thus, when one cultivated the technique to perfection and achieved level 9, they could increase their combat strength by 256 times. Although this increase was not as great as when he broke through to the conate realm, when his strength increased by over 1,000 times, the scary thing was that there was no limit to this enhancement. In other words, even if Wang Yi had already reached the land immortal realm, this increase would still be effective. It would also increase his combat strength by 256 times. This thing was a little scary. He could essentially sweep all experts of the same realm as him. Meanwhile, attacking higher realm experts was a routine operation. Of course, although the Taizan scripture was terrifying, it was not invincible. It also had a fatal weakness. Unlike the cultivation techniques of the other 3 powers, raising one's psychic power was abnormally difficult. The 9 levels of the Taizan scripture represented the 9 realms of the mind. Even with Wang Yi's heaven-defying martial arts comprehension, he had only barely managed to cultivate level 1 of the technique and step into the first level of the mind. Furthermore, it was only with the help of the Dao enhancement method, epiphany, and the Taizan jade liquid. However, even if he had only reached level 1, and his combat strength had only increased by 100%, it was still abnormally terrifying. It was a simple calculation. After Wang Yi's 3 powers had all reached perfection, his power treasures had been opened, and after releasing endless potential, his combat strength was already comparable to an invincible expert in the divine realm. This is from the SoundStories Audiobook YouTube channel. Furthermore, after he broke through to the conate realm, the 3 powers soared and increased by 4,800 times each. However, this also exhausted the terrifying foundation Wang Yi had accumulated while in the 9-rank system. What did this mean? This was equivalent to the power of 4,800 invincible divine realm experts being stacked on one person. However, this kind of stacking was not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. Wang Yi's strength was 4,800 times that of a divine realm expert, but this did not mean that 4,800 divine realm experts could compete with him. On the contrary, if such a thing really happened, those 4,800 divine realm experts would probably be suppressed and killed instantly. There would be no accidents. At this level, the difference in quality was no longer something that numbers could make up for. It could be said that breaking through to the Conate realm and increasing his combat strength to such a heaven-defying level had already exhausted the terrifying foundation that Wang Yi had accumulated when he was in the 9-rank system. It was impossible to obtain such a huge improvement in a short period of time. Only by continuing to accumulate a powerful foundation in the Conate realm would he be able to make such a leap in improvement when he broke through in the future. However, under the premise that Wang Yi's foundation was exhausted, a psychic power cultivation technique that had only reached level 1 actually doubled his combat strength. As a result, the previous increase of 4,800 times became an increase of 9,600 times now. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell how terrifying and frightening this was. Most importantly, this increase was permanent. As Wang Yi continued to become stronger, this increase would also become greater. Suppressing the excitement in his heart, Wang Yi placed the Zan paper and the Tai Zan jade liquid into the system space before preparing to leave. After all, he had already wasted a lot of time. He was not alone, he still had a wife and family to worry about. Boom! The moment the two items disappeared, the world suddenly lost its color, and lightning danced in the void. As the wind blew and clouds surged, the straw hut and the long table turned into dust. Even the heaven-supporting barrier that had stopped Wang Yi previously flickered and dissipated into the void. Wang Yi was a little stunned when he saw this, but he did not pay much attention to it. He just thought that the straw hut had completed its mission and the power that did not belong to this world naturally disappeared from the world. Wang Yi bowed slightly in the direction where the straw hut had disappeared to thank the immortal poet for imparting the technique. Speaking of which, Wang Yi also wanted to test his extreme speed and did not open the spatial passageway. Boom! His figure seemed to have transformed into a stream of light as he simply soared into the sky. He instantly disappeared from the wilderness, accompanied by a terrifying sonic boom. When the naked eye could no longer see Wang Yi and spiritual power could no longer sense his existence, a fluctuation suddenly appeared in the void. The void, which was originally as calm as water, started to ripple. It was as if a stone had been thrown into a calm lake, or a piece of ice had been smashed by a huge force, causing multiple cracks. A green-robed phantom suddenly appeared. Step by step, it stepped through the layers of spatial ripples and walked to the spot where Wang Yi was standing previously. He seemed to be in an illusion, and his figure was blurry, preventing one from seeing his facial features. He also seemed to be in reality. His body was like heaven and earth, able to accommodate all things in the world and also able to bear the strongest power in the world. It was as if he was standing in an unpredictable future. His gaze was as deep as an abyss, directly passing through the restrictions of time and space. In his pupils, the world was constantly reincarnating, evolving into thousands of scenes of Wang Yi's future. As time passed, the green-robed phantom saw something terrifying. His voice trembled slightly as it said hoarsely, "There's not much time left for you. An unprecedented change has already begun. The torrent of history is surging forward. I hope you can grasp this prosperous world and rise from its glory and brilliance. In the evolutionary history of martial arts, you will leave a deep mark for yourself." And with that, the green-robed figure seemed to have regained his composure. His gaze was indifferent. No one knew what he was thinking. Perhaps he was communicating with the mighty existence in the dark in a way that the world could not understand. Or maybe he was just talking to himself, lamenting and worrying alone. Then, the green-robed figure stopped talking. His gaze remained in the direction where Wang Yi had disappeared. His gaze changed several times before finally shaking his head and completely disappearing from this world. His appearance was sudden, and his disappearance was equally strange. It was as if nothing had happened, and peace returned to this place. Meanwhile, Wang Yi's body turned into a rainbow, like a bolt of lightning that tore through the sky. His figure flew at high speed in the sky, and the violent hurricane that came at him made his clothes flutter. To be honest, with Wang Yi's strength, he could naturally use his true chi to protect his body and easily block the attack of the hurricane. However, he didn't do so. He enjoyed the sensation of the wind blowing against him as he flew at top speed. How fast! He was incomparably fast. In the blink of an eye, he had already crossed an endless distance and simply appeared above Kang City. With this extreme speed that ignored the restrictions of space, it was not an exaggeration to say that he had teleported. His spiritual power instantly covered the entire city as he stood in the sky. As if sensing something, the corners of Wang Yi's mouth curled up slightly, revealing a faint smile. Then, he disappeared from the spot and appeared above his house the next moment. Perhaps it was because Wang Yi had lived here for a long time and had left behind his will and marks, but the villa was still intact and did not suffer any damage. In the courtyard of the towering ancient tea tree, all kinds of green plants were lush and lively. Fish swam and played in the spirit streams. Under the ancient tea tree, several people sat facing each other. Although Su Xia sat quietly, she could not hide her worry. Venerable Ning Jing naturally knew what Su Xia was worried about. She patiently advised her, "Sister Xia, don't worry too much. The strong enemy has been killed. Fellow Taoist Wang is just going out of the city to break through and transcend the tribulation. With his combat strength, he naturally won't encounter any danger. I believe he will return soon." Su Xia nodded slightly upon hearing this and said softly, "I'm fine. Thank you for your concern, Sister Ning Jing." That was true. Su Xia believed what Venerable Ning Jing said, but she couldn't suppress the worry in her heart. The worry on her face didn't decrease much. After all, that was her man and the person she loved. It wouldn't be too much to worry about him. When Wang Yi saw this, he felt a warm current pass through his heart. It did feel good to have someone care about him. Wang Yi didn't hide and appeared in the courtyard with a faint smile. As soon as he appeared, the people under the ancient tea tree saw him. The moment Su Xia saw Wang Yi, her expression brightened. A bright smile appeared on her face and she no longer looked worried. Before Su Xia could get up, Wang Yi took a step forward and appeared under the ancient tea tree. Ignoring the few third wheels beside them, he gently pulled Su Xia into his arms. Su Xia seemed a little shy as she leaned on Wang Yi's shoulder. Her face was red, and she looked extremely cute. Everyone had smiles in their eyes as they waited quietly at the side. Naturally, no one would disturb the two of them. As time passed, Su Xia finally remembered the people beside her. She quickly broke free from Wang Yi's embrace and said in a soft voice, "There are still guests around." Seeing Wang Yi look up, Fang Yuan and Fang Mings bowed slightly and said, "Greetings, sir." Wang Yi was still very happy that the Fang family could come. However, he was still worried and instructed, "The city has been severely damaged. Don't delay the repair work." When Fang Yuan heard this, he bowed again and said, "Sir, don't worry. Brother Tang has already started to help the city guards with disaster relief. We will definitely not delay the relief work." Wang Yi nodded slightly and looked at Venerable Ning Jing. He smiled and said, "Thank you, fellow Taoist Ning Jing, for remembering Shiyu." To be honest, Wang Yi was indeed quite surprised and happy about this. He had thought that Venerable Ning Jing would definitely interrogate the foreign captive immediately. After all, this concerned the future enemy of the human race, and the connate expert belonged to the higher-ups of the foreign race. As long as they could pry open his mouth, they would be able to obtain information far beyond their imagination. However, Wang Yi did not expect that Venerable Ning Jing wouldn't choose to interrogate the connate realm foreign captive. Instead, she comforted Su Xia first. What she had done made him feel very happy. Since he was happy, he was willing to take out some of the good stuff. When Venerable Ning Jing heard this, she shook her head gently and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Wang, you're too polite. You fought for the human race, so I should naturally do this. Besides, Sister Xia and I are as close as sisters. How can I ignore her?" At this point, Venerable Ning Jing suddenly changed the topic. "However, since fellow Taoist Wang has returned, I'm relieved. There are still some important matters that I need to deal with, so I won't disturb you here." Wang Yi naturally knew what Venerable Ning Jing was referring to. However, since Venerable Ning Jing was here, there was no need to waste time. Before Venerable Ning Jing could move, Wang Yi stopped her. "Fellow Taoist Ning Jing, wait." Venerable Ning Jing couldn't help but look puzzled when she heard this. She asked, "Fellow Taoist Wang, is there anything else?" Wang Yi nodded slightly and took out the piece of Zon paper with the words, "Ode to Gallantry," from the system space. He casually threw it into the air. Then, he smiled at Venerable Ning Jing and said, "There's a peerless cultivation technique hidden in this poem, but only someone with a pure mind can comprehend it. I wonder if fellow Taoist Ning Jing is interested in comprehending it." When Venerable Ning Jing heard this, her expression couldn't help but change slightly. She looked at the Zon paper in the air and became extremely passionate. A peerless cultivation technique. Since this cultivation technique could be dubbed peerless by the current Wang Yi, it was definitely terrifying to the point of being sensational. Venerable Ning Jing naturally wouldn't reject the temptation of such a cultivation technique, nor could she bear to reject it. In any case, she couldn't even count the number of favors she owed Wang Yi. There was a saying that if one had too many lice, it wouldn't itch. If one had too many debts, one wouldn't have to worry. Thus, Venerable Ning Jing did not feel embarrassed and said openly, "Of course I'm interested. Thank you, fellow Taoist Wang." The moment she finished speaking, Venerable Ning Jing no longer said anything about leaving. She sat back in her seat with a faint gaze. Her connate realm divine sense instantly locked onto the Zon paper as she carefully comprehended the Tao and the principles contained in the words. When Wang Yi saw this, a faint smile appeared on his face. He swept his gaze across the others and said with a smile, "You guys can also give it a try. If you can comprehend anything, it can be considered an opportunity for you." Fang Yuan, Fang Mings, and Hua Changyan couldn't help but look overjoyed when they heard this. They bowed and thanked him in unison. Then, they focused their gaze on the Zon paper and began to comprehend, Ode to Gallantry. Even Su Xia was not idle. She imitated everyone and focused her gaze in midair. Wang Yi did not say anything about this. After all, this thing only looked at a martial artist's mind. There was no requirement for a martial artist's strength or martial arts aptitude. No matter who it was, they actually had a chance to comprehend the Taizan scripture and cultivate a fourth power that had never appeared in this world. It was even very likely that those with high cultivation levels would gain nothing, while ordinary people would be able to reach the heavens in a single bound and directly condense a psychic Dharma idol. However, what happened next completely exceeded Wang Yi's expectations. Buzz! A faint green halo spread out from Venerable Ning Jing's body, and her psychic power fluctuated in the void. In the depths of her mind, a green Dharma idol was slowly condensing and was about to walk into reality from nothingness. As someone who had condensed a psychic Dharma idol, Wang Yi naturally knew what it represented. This meant that Venerable Ning Jing had already comprehended the Taizan scripture. At this moment, she was trying to break through to level 1 of the mind and wanted to completely condense the psychic Dharma idol. How long had it been? Probably not even 10 minutes. To be honest, Wang Yi really could not understand this. After all, Venerable Ning Jing had been in a high position throughout and held great power in her hands. She had seen all the prosperous venerables in the mortal world. How did she manage to be so pure-minded, and how did she manage to reach the level where she was about to condense a psychic Dharma idol in such a short time? Of course, Venerable Ning Jing naturally did not know what Wang Yi was thinking. At this moment, there were already endless waves in the depths of her mind, and her spirit and will were all focused on her heart. Venerable Ning Jing had indeed lived for a long time and had experienced the endless vicissitudes and temptations of the mortal world. However, there was a conviction in the depths of her mind. It was the belief that she would protect billions of human beings, expand the territory of the human race, and help the human race become extremely strong. It could also be said to be an obsession. It was also this obsession that turned into a spring of power that supported the rapidly condensing psychic Dharma idol. Boom! Venerable Ning Jing's mind suddenly shook. Even without the enhancement of the Taizan jade liquid, her psychic Dharma idol directly turned from illusion to reality and instantly condensed. She had reached level 1 of the Taizan scripture. She had achieved the first level of the mind. However, this was only the beginning. Venerable Ning Jing's eyes were still closed, and the psychic power lingering around her became even more violent and turbulent. The psychic Dharma idol that had just turned corporeal seemed to have turned into a black hole that swallowed the sky. It crazily swallowed and plundered the special power that seeped out from the unknown. The body of the Dharma idol also continued to expand. 10 meters, 20 meters, 99 meters. When the body of the psychic Dharma idol broke through to 100 meters, the Taizan scripture broke through again and directly entered Level 2. Her psychic realm also reached Level 2. Venerable Ning Jing's breakthrough did not stop, like a hot knife cutting through butter. She directly raised her psychic Dharma idol to the peak of Level 9, and her combat strength permanently increased by 9 times. Perhaps it was due to the nourishment of her psychic power, or perhaps it was due to the guidance of some special power, but Venerable Ning Jing's cultivation level was also breaking through crazily. It was only when she reached the peak of Conate level 9 and completely condensed her psychic Dharma idol that the trend finally stopped. As for the others, they had more or less comprehended something. At the very least, they had grasped wisps of psychic power and could increase their combat strength. What surprised Wang Yi the most was Su Xiyu. She had actually condensed a psychic Dharma idol and even broken through to level -4. Her cultivation level was also advancing by leaps and bounds. The Eternal Youth technique was directly raised to the peak of level 13, and she had the qualifications to compete with Conate Realm experts. After everyone woke up from their cultivation, Wang Yi announced that he wanted to take Fang Mings as his disciple. This news seemed to have grown wings and instantly spread throughout the entire Langya domain, causing a level 18 earthquake. All the experts above the Grandmaster realm, be it the Guardians or the other higher-ups, rushed over to participate in the disciple recruitment ceremony of a Conate Venerable. During the banquet, Wang Yi used the Heaven and Earth Gate secret technique to cross the endless territories and hunt demon Venerable level creatures to entertain everyone. After everyone left, Venerable Ning Jing brought news that the powerful foreign race member who had been captured had spoken. They were creatures of the martial immortal race. Unlike the Yang God race, they mainly relied on their physical strength, but spiritual power was their weakness. However, he was only an ordinary clansman. His level and status were not high enough. He did not have access to confidential information and did not know about the other world passages. Every moment of the night was worth 1,000 pieces of gold. Wang Yi finally waited until Su Xia's physical strength surpassed the battle warrior rank. The two of them consummated their marriage. At this moment, Wang Yi finally understood the lines. They slept until the sun was high and complained that the spring day was too short. From then on, the king never attended the morning court 1. Meanwhile, the human race on planet Earth was in a critical situation. Countless monks were using their lives as a source to support the operation of the array formation. For the rest of the time, Wang Yi focused all his attention on signing in and cultivating. In just a year, Wang Yi had reached Conate level 9 and achieved perfection. Thus, he directly stepped into the true immortal realm. This year, the organization of martial arts teachers had already covered the entire Langya domain. Countless creatures began to cultivate Wang Yi's simplified cultivation technique. In the same year, more than 80% of the humans in Langya domain had broken through to the 9-rank system. This year, the organization of martial arts teachers had affected the interests of some existences, and its core members were attacked. Wang Yi was furious. This was the first time he had walked out of Kang City after a year. He had forcefully suppressed those who had ill intentions and even killed a Conate realm being on the spot. In the second year, Wang Yi's cultivation continued to advance by leaps and bounds. He broke through the true immortal realm and became a peerless heaven immortal who could truly support the destiny of his race. At this moment, Wang Yi seemed to have vaguely sensed that the next major realm was the so-called land immortal realm. This made Wang Yi excited. He missed planet Earth and finally saw the opportunity to return. It was also in the second year that Su Xia got pregnant. Wang Yi was very excited to know that he was about to become a father. In the third year, Wang Yi had already reached the peak of the peerless heaven immortal realm. He was talented and invincible in the world. Although he had yet to reach the land immortal realm, he could already find the mark of the myriad world seal on Lu Yanyan and vaguely deduce the location of planet Earth. In the same year, Su Xia, who was nearly 20 months pregnant, had yet to give birth. This made Wang Yi very anxious. Fortunately, he sensed that the baby's life force was strong and that everything was normal. Only then did he feel relieved. In the fourth year, Wang Yi observed life and death in the world and had an epiphany. He grasped the power of origin and successfully stepped into the land immortal realm. At this moment, Wang Yi finally understood why only by stepping into the land immortal realm could he reverse the seal of the myriad world seal and find the location of planet Earth. This was because one would be able to grasp the origin at the land immortal realm. With a thought, he could dissect the essence of the world and completely grasp the power of the world. At this moment, Wang Yi's strength was already at the very top of the pyramid. His divine sense could instantly envelop the entire world. 33 months later, Su Xia finally gave birth to a daughter for both of them. When the child was born, a phenomenon appeared, and the entire world was trembling. Wang Yi named his daughter Wang'an, meaning that the world would be peaceful and safe for eternity. Wang Yi used his supreme power to determine the precise location of planet Earth. He was about to leave, but before returning to planet Earth, he wanted to completely resolve the calamity of the beast race and the other foreign races in this world. Wang Yi chose to expose his strength and gather all the experts in the human camp as a land immortal. Then, he used his origin power to communicate with the world and instantly kill all the members of the beast race and the foreign races below the Conate realm. Then, Wang Yi's spiritual power covered the world to accurately find the beasts and top experts of the foreign races. He used the heaven and earth gate secret technique to behead them. In the end, all the beasts and foreign races in this world were killed. Wang Yi retreated and prepared to return to planet Earth. Wang Yi did not know what the road ahead was like, nor did he know the strength of the enemy, nor did he know if he could return alive from this trip. Before he left, he confessed his identity as a transmigrator to Su Xiu. However, to Wang Yi's surprise, Su Xia did not show any surprise. Instead, she calmly said that she knew. Moreover, Su Xia even said that Wang Yi had told her this news the day before he transmigrated. Wang Yi felt gloomy. He felt that a conspiracy was looming over him. After bidding farewell to his family, Wang Yi prepared to return to planet Earth. He did not choose to summon the experts of this world to fight alongside him. This was because he knew that human wave tactics would not be of any use against creatures of the land immortal realm. However, just before Wang Yi left, Su Xia, Venerable Ning Jingwo had just broken through to the true immortal realm. Fang Mings, Fang Yuan, and countless experts above the connate realm suddenly appeared. They were willing to advance and retreat with him. Wang Yi was touched. After bowing and thanking everyone, he directly opened the world passage and led his wife and countless experts back to planet Earth. On planet Earth, the situation was already extremely bad. The Yang God race and the martial immortal race had sent out dozens of land immortal level creatures to hunt and attack. The array formation was in danger. The monks who maintained the array formation kept coughing up blood. Meanwhile, some people instantly died. Wang Yi was furious. He directly erupted with his full strength and used his supreme power to unleash a forbidden level divine power, instantly killing several powerful enemies. However, at the land immortal realm, almost all of them were invincible beings that amazed an entire era. In a situation where they were outnumbered, even if Wang Yi's combat strength was heaven-defying and was enough to reign supreme among the land immortals, he was still beaten until he coughed up blood non-stop. At the critical moment, someone charged out from the array formation and killed the enemies with a spear, suppressing the foreign land immortals to the point where they could not raise their heads. Wang Yi was horrified. He was extremely familiar with that person. It was actually him before he transmigrated. He was the god of war, Wang Wei. At this moment, Wang Yi finally understood that they were soulmates. The final battle had begun. The foreign races still had 15 peak land immortals, while the human camp only had 2 land immortals. Even though their combat strength was heaven-defying, it was still extremely difficult for them to fight. The war continued. Fortunately, with Wang Yi and the addition of countless connate lifeforms, they could barely hold back the experts from the foreign race. As the war continued, the humans gradually gained the upper hand because experts began to return one after another. A young man in the land immortal realm wearing luxurious clothes appeared. He hugged the waist of a beautiful woman and asked with a smile, "Dear, is this your world? Watch how I destroy those invaders." As he spoke, the young man in luxurious clothes killed countless foreign races with a wave of his hand. He even heavily injured a land immortal. During this period, another child in the land immortal realm appeared and asked the middle-aged man behind him in a childish voice, "Father, is this our hometown? Nini wants to kill those bad people." The young child waved his fist and instantly cleared a large number of powerful enemies. At the same time, he severely injured a land immortal. Immediately after, an empress and an immortal king descended, while the owner of the system and the earliest transmigrators returned. Without exception, they were all invincible experts at the land immortal realm. Very suddenly, the war came to an end, and the great battle began. In the end, after paying a price, the human race completely eliminated the land immortals from the foreign races. Just as the human race was celebrating their victory, the ancestors of the Yang God race and the martial immortal race descended. They had already surpassed the land immortal realm and severely injured the peak combat strength of the human race. Human experts were heavily injured and died one after another. Wang Yi was also bleeding. At the moment of life and death, Wang Yi wanted to stimulate himself with great terror and successfully enter the next realm. However, he kept feeling that something was missing and he could not take that step. At the critical moment, the god of war Wang Wei suddenly burned himself and fused the origin power of his body into Wang Yi's origin to make up for his missing origin. Then, Wang Yi broke through and directly stepped into the sage realm. The 3 sages engaged in the most intense battle. Facing such a powerful enemy, Wang Yi could not hold back. He fought until the world collapsed, mountains and rivers shattered, and countless living beings died. In the end, planet Earth was completely shattered. Wang Yi was about to go crazy. He had advanced to the peak of the Sage Realm and finally killed 2 Saint Realm ancestors at the cost of serious injuries. After the battle, Wang Yi stood in the silent and broken universe. He looked at the civilization that had almost been completely destroyed and the countless corpses of living beings. He was sad and blamed himself. After sitting alone for 30 years, Wang Yi suddenly comprehended something. He used his physical strength to evolve the origin of earth, his energy to evolve the origin of water, his spiritual power to evolve the origin of fire, and his psychic power to evolve the origin of wind. He used his 4 powers to recreate the elements of earth, fire, wind, and water. Then, he opened up a world and established a cycle of reincarnation. He used his own world to carry the souls of the endless dead. As the master of the world, he controlled the cycle of reincarnation and allowed those dead to live again with their memories. 33 years later, countless living beings from Wang Yi's world returned to the real world. The powerful enemy died, and the dead were resurrected. The carefree Wang Yi disappeared from this world with his wife and daughter. This is the end of this story.